Ready?
You can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the October 19th City of Charlotte zoning meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and just to make a note that tonight's zoning meeting is being held as a virtual meeting in accordance with the electronic meeting statute. The requirements around notice, access, and minutes are being met electronically. If you are not viewing this yet, you may view it on the government channel, the city's Facebook page, or the YouTube page for the city. So I'm going to ask the council members to introduce themselves. I'm going to start off as I'm Vi Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, and we'll go in the order that we have.
Julie Eisel, Mayor Pro Tem and serving at large.
Dimple Ajmera at large.
Mr. Mitchell will be joining us momentarily, so we can go and proceed after Mr. Mitchell.
Braxton Winston at large.
Larkin Eggleston, District 1.
Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Victoria Watlington, District 3.
Renee Johnson, District 4.
And Newton, District 5.
Charles Picard, D6.
Good evening, Ed Dries, District 7.
Okay. We begin our meeting with an expression of inspiration followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation is intended to solemnize our own deliberations as a council, and we recognize that we have diversity of faith and religion in this community, including those that do not practice our faith. So tonight I'm going to ask Councilmember Ajmera to address us, and then I would like to have Councilmember Bakari will say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll all stand and be recognized for that effort, while he's doing that. So with that, Councilmember Ajmera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's pray for our great city. My brothers and sisters on the council, city staff and administrators, may peace be with you. Let us commit to govern using our clear conscience and our values as guidance so that we may focus our positive energy on doing what is right and what is just for the people of Charlotte. Let us work to ensure their civil liberties, prosperity, and freedom from want and freedom from fear. Let's recommit to the reasons that we chose a life of public service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ajmera. It will stand, and Mr. Bakari will say the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Bakari. I'd like to now have the staff introduce themselves, and we'll start with our city clerk and go around the room. Ms.
Lakeisha Hall, Charlotte Department of Transportation.
Robin Byers, Charlotte of Transportation.
Terry Hagler Gray, Senior Assistant City Attorney.
Dave Pettin, Rezoning Program Manager.
Donata Jackson, Office of Constituent Services.
Taiwo Job, City Manager's Office.
All right. Now, we are ready to begin with an explanation of the zoning process, just to make sure that this is probably one of the most prescriptive meetings that we have as a council, prescriptive in that we follow the legislative guidelines that we have for zoning, as well as our own zoning ordinance. So the process begins when applications are submitted to the planning staff. There are two types of cases that we'll deal with on our agenda: decisions and hearings. Decisions are for cases that have already had a public hearing, and we will have no further comment except by the council to either accept or not the recommendation that's on the floor for the decision. On our hearings, we have electronically, you must have signed up to speak, and I hope that we've had you check with our technology folks so that you can be heard. We will have in the hearing our staff presentation. The petitioner and those in favor get 3 minutes to speak on the case unless if there's opposition to the petition. If there's opposition, the petitioner gets 10 minutes, the opponent gets 10 minutes, and then the petitioner gets a 2-minute rebuttal. If no one is opposed or signed up to speak, the staff provides a short presentation, council has questions, the public hearing is closed, and then we move to the next item. After we have the hearings, the petition goes to the zoning committee of the planning commission for review and recommendation. So who's representing our planning commission tonight?
That'd be Kiva Samuel.
Okay, Kiva, are you on?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Would you explain the zoning committee's process following the council's process?
Absolutely. So following the hearings tonight, decisions for those hearings will be made due to election night. They will be held Wednesday, November 4th. That meeting will not be a continuation of tonight's hearing. There will not be an opportunity for public input unless and until a commission or committee member has a specific question that is best addressed by public.
And now, do you have members of the zoning committee of the planning commission online? And would you give their names, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Douglas Welton is the vice chair of the the zoning committee. We have Victoria Wasike, Elizabeth McMillan, Aaron Barbie, Peter Kelly, on with us online.
All right. Thank you very much. As our practice is that as we get later in the evening, we may recess any meeting that is taking us beyond 7 p.m. and reconvene at a later date. Hopefully, we can get through all of these tonight before that time. As a result of the staff's work, we have deferrals and withdrawals. I will read through those, and then we will have all of them approved unless there's an exception in one motion. The item number 3A, petition 2020-062 by I3I Ventures has been withdrawn, as recommended for withdrawal. Item 3B, the Keith Corporation 2020-049 is deferred to November the 16th. Item 8, 2019-179, petition 2019-179 by Ronald Staley, Jr., Verity Homes, is being recommended for deferral to November the 16th. In fact, all of the items that I will read from this point forward are all recommended for deferral until November the 16th. The next item is number 9, petition 2020-014, Carolina Builders, LLC. Item 16, 2020-066, Uruk Development Company. Item 26, 2020-045, Andrew Klink. And item 27, petition 2020-037, Renee Pride Dunlap. And then the last one is item number 30, 2020, petition 2020-052, Selwyn Property Group. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve all withdrawals and deferrals.
Do I have a second? Is there any discussion?
Can I have one matter of housekeeping real quick?
Yes.
Item number 26, petition 2020-045 is actually a withdrawal request. It was read in as a deferral.
Excuse me. Thank you for catching that for me.
Yeah.
So as Mr. Patins has said versus what I read, for the motion to include a second withdrawal at petition 2020-045.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I must read the list. So starting with Mr. Driggs,
Yes.
Mr. Bakari,
Yes.
Mr. Newton,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Watlington,
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston.
Yes.
Is there anyone who objects to this motion? Hearing no objection, the motion passes unanimously with the absence of Mr. Graham. All right. Has Mr. Graham joined us?
I'm here.
I'm sorry, I did not have you on our list, so the motion passes unanimously. All right, so the next item, we will have some items that will require some changes as a result of the zoning committee's changes that were made after our hearing and after the zoning committee's vote. And remember, this requires a motion to accept or send back to the zoning committee, and that motion has to pass with 3/4 of the council support. So with that, I believe we're ready to go to our first decision, which is item number 4. Agenda item 4, petition 2020-104 by the Charlotte Planning, Design, and Development Group. Our staff has recommended summary of our Chapter 13 signs of the zoning ordinance to provide additional flexibility, scale, utilization of building space, as well as address unintended consequences, help us with our enforcement process, add, update, and delete definitions and graphics in accordance with the recommendation. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this text amendment.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do I have a motion to adopt and accept the zoning commission's statement of consistency as our own?
That too, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. And I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussions, we'll start off with Mr. I'm sorry, I'm losing my sheet of paper here. Mayor Pro Tem? Mayor Pro Tem?
As we've done in the past, it might be easier to get 3 quick votes in the room.
All right, I'll just start with the people in the room then. Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Who else is, that's it. So, Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton? Mr. Newton? I see, I have Mr. Driggs, Mr. Eggleston, Ms.
We've got 4 people, including
Watlington,
Ms.
4. I
Johnson.
need 2 more.
Tark says yes.
Who said?
Tart.
That's Tark.
Tart,
yes.
thank you. And then, did Mr. Graham?
Yes.
All right. Is there anyone in opposition to this petition, decision? Hearing no opposition, it's unanimous, and we'll move on to item number 5. Item number 5 is rezoning petition 2018-034 by Charles and Ellen Gray for approximately .7 acres located in University City area, District 4. The current zoning is B1CD, neighborhood business conditional. The proposed zoning is neighborhood business conditional site plan amendment. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Do I have a motion to accept the zoning committee's recommendation and adopt the statement of consistency as our own?
So moved.
Second.
I had Ms. Johnson made the motion. It was seconded by Ms. Watlington. Is there any discussion? Hearing no I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson?
We did have it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank the petitioner for working with the University City Partners.
Oh,
to work out
Ms.
some-
Johnson, I did not capture one thing that needed to be done. So this petition does require changes since the zoning committee has taken place, so.
Motion to not send back to zoning committee?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second not to send it back to the zoning committee.
Everybody please mute.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Driggs and Mr. Eggleston.
Yes.
All in favor of that, say Ms. Isolt? All right, Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
I believe that's 6. Does anyone object to this motion? Hearing no objection, the motion passes. Yes? Unanimously. Now, we still have the motion on the floor to approve and adopt the statement of consistency, and I recognize Ms. Johnson.
I just wanted to thank the developer for those changes that were made.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the changes included accessory drive-through windows accessory drive-through window was removed as an allowable use. Okay. We got that one. So thank you very much. We'll now move to item number 6.
It's unanimous, it should be fine.
Oh, did we vote? Oh, my gosh, it's going to be a long night. All right, so let's start out with our voting here. Mr. Driggs? Yes. Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Is there anyone that objects to this petition? Hearing no objections, we now pass item number 5 unanimously. The next item on our agenda is item number 6, petition by rezoning petition 2019-163 by Novant Health. Because I am on the board of Novant Health, I'm going to ask the Mayor Pro Tem to conduct this vote. Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, and I'm having technical difficulties. That's why you haven't heard me. So hang on.
Okay. If you're having technical difficulties, do you mind if Mr. Driggs does the vote or direct it?
No, that's fine.
Okay, Mr. Driggs, would you lead the effort on this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Petition 219-163. Current zoning is MUD O, mixed-use development.
We can't hear him.
Proposed zoning is MUD O site plan amendment, approximately 23.7 acres located at the west corner intersection of North Tryon Street and West Mallard Creek Church Road, approved by the zoning committee unanimously. Do I hear a motion to adopt the zoning committee's recommendation and approve the petition?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we'll now take the vote. Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
And Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
All right, that's 6 votes. Is anybody opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Driggs. The next item is item number 7, petition 2019-167 by Grubb Management. It is approximately 0.7 of an acre in District 2. Its current zoning is general industrial and single-family residential. The proposed zoning is mixed-use development optional. This petition has had changes following the zoning committee's recommendation. I will read those changes and ask for a motion. Provides a range of amenities to, yes, ma'am.
I think it has changes, and then you need to get 9 votes for that.
Okay. Yeah, okay. We will need 9 votes for the changes to approve. I'm going to read the changes to encourage multimodal transportation and a car-free lifestyle, including a minimum of 1 bike rack space per bedroom in a climate control area, minimum of 2 ride sharing parking and loading spaces, a minimum of 3 visitor parking spaces, including 1 ADA space, a minimum of 7 spaces reserved for cargo, /e-bike, or similar multimodal transportation aids, a minimum of 1 electronic multimodal transportation and charging station, bicycle maintenance program available to residents, approximately 60 oversized refrigeration and package system lockers to allow for grocery and food delivery. The staff believes these changes are not minor, do not warrant an additional review by the zoning committee. Do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Eggleston, or any discussion? Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yeah, wait, I'm sorry. Oh, yes.
Ms. Watlington? Yes. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Newton? Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
That motion has 6 votes, and is there anyone in I'm sorry, we need 9. And you just told me that, Terry. All right, that's 6. So Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. Bakari,
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira.
Yes.
Okay, that's 9 votes. Okay, with that, is there anyone in opposition to not returning this to the zoning committee? Hearing no one in opposition, the motion passes unanimously. All right, so now we go to the actual motion for the item, which is the zoning committee recommended 4-3 to recommend approval of this petition. Staff recommends approval of the petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to site and building design. My understanding, Mr. Patin, do you want to explain the staff's exception or approval of outstanding issues?
Sure. So we did still have some outstanding issues from the original staff analysis through zoning committee. Those include items that relate to building height, and we had some understanding that that is not likely to change, but since that wasn't addressed, we still have to list those as outstanding issues. Staff's comfortable with the project as it's presented, even with those outstanding issues. We feel like they've done enough work to make this be able to be a successful car-free venture. And so again, we do support the concept of the project. We just need to continue to note that that building height has not been addressed since that plan was initially submitted, and it does still remain an outstanding item.
All right. So is there a motion to?
So moved for approval, Mayor.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I have Ms. I'm sorry. I'm looking, Ms.
Mr. Graham.
I understand. I'm just trying to get a list here.
Okay.
All right. I have Mr. Graham, Ms. Watlington. Ms. Watlington, all right, Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of council. This is in the heart of District 2, and one of the hallmarks of district representation is listening to your constituents. And this one has gotten a lot of conversation since it was introduced to us several months ago, and notwithstanding the changes that were implemented, the central issue still remains, which is parking. And I think the minority opinion in our booklet from the the zoning committee kind of sums it up. The committee members appreciated the affordability and the innovation of the petition. However, without the resolution of the burden of parking, creating the transfer of cars to the neighborhood streets, the scale of the buildings, not having the infrastructure to support, and lack of community support, and let me underscore that, the lack of community support, a majority of the zoning commission minority voted against this petition, and I will tonight. I clearly understand the innovative nature of the project, but it's simply the right project on the wrong site. There will be a overwhelming burden of cars that will flow over into the neighborhoods. There's no doubt about that. Notwithstanding the restriction of those who live there, even if a third of the residents had a guest over for dinner, just one guest, on a Sunday, that's about 45 cars. And all those cars will be within the neighborhoods surrounding the development. If Blue Blaze Brewery had an event and those cars were there, it's just going to really create a unusual and difficult parking situation for those who live there and their guests, and the neighborhoods who live in the surrounding areas. I certainly understand the forward thinking of a carless environment, If this was closely associated with a transit line, like on North Tryon Street, there are some buildings, apartments, where you can literally just walk across the street and jump on the train. That might make a difference, but again, I believe this is a good project, but certainly on the wrong site, and I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Graham. Ms. Watlington?
I'm good.
All right. Mr. Eggleston?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I certainly respect, I know Councilmember Graham does his due diligence on all of our votes, but particularly in his district, and I certainly think that the concerns that have been voiced are valid. I'll be voting for it, and I think, and I want people to know why I think that several of us will be, because if we've got priorities that we have around affordable housing, around being a more environmentally friendly, sustainable community, about being a more transit-oriented and less car-centric city, we're going to have to, try things. I think you've seen that with mixed response on things like our bus lane pilot on Central Avenue and 4th Street. I think this is an innovative way to tackle some of the challenges and aspirations that we have in front of us. We've got to be willing to try things and let them play out to see if they work, to be proof of concept for some of these ideas. And we've got to push ourselves a little bit beyond our current comfort zone. And I think this does that. Again, I don't minimize the concerns of the neighbors there, but I think that people, when they realize that their friends, where their friend lives is a place where they don't have somewhere that they can easily park, it will encourage them to take the Gold Line, which will be built out at that time, to that area. It will encourage them to take an Uber or a Lyft or an e-scooter. You know, there's plenty of places in this country, some of people's favorite cities in this country and around the world, where the best neighborhoods and the ones that everyone wants to live, work, and play in are places where you cannot park, or certainly not easily. And yet people find a way to get there and to live there. So I don't envision us being Manhattan, but I do think that we can push ourselves a little bit further out of our comfort zone. I think this does this and will be proof of concept that there are people who want to live a carless lifestyle. And so I will be supporting this with that in mind tonight.
Mr. Driggs?
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say I'm with the district rep on this, Mr. Graham. I appreciate his engagement with the community, and I think when it comes down to pushing against some of our practices or norms, we may choose to do that. I'm not sure that we should impose that on residents. And I still think there's a solution here to achieve a lot of what is proposed that does not involve 0 or only 6 parking spaces. I think something where you have a ratio of 0.3 to 0.5 of parking spaces, and those are offered at extra cost to people who choose to use them, should allow the other apartments to be offered for the non-users at the same price as you would if there was no parking, and would afford relief to people nearby. I also wanted to comment, I'm kind of interested in the staff recommendation, because the staff recommends approval, and we read the rationale, and it says, the scale of the proposed building does not adequately provide a height transition to the adjacent single-family homes. While the site is within a half-mile of Future Link's Gold Line stop and bus routes and adjacent, it is anticipated that the majority of residents will own automobiles. And my understanding was the premise of this whole thing is that they would not. That in fact, we talked about how to ensure that only people who didn't own automobiles would live in this building. And then the site provides 50% of the units that will be affordable up to 80% of AMI, good. But then it says the size and scale of the building as well as the lack of available parking may provide land use incompatibilities and parking strain. So that's about the weakest endorsement I've ever seen from the staff. And in fact, I don't see a whole lot of compelling reasons why we should support it based on the recommendation we have from the staff. I'm kind of curious that they actually came down in favor of this. And therefore, I'm not going to be able to support it. Thank you.
Ms. Watlington?
I keep signing up to ask questions, and then I hear my colleagues, and I appreciate your comments. So actually, I am okay. I really am.
Okay. Any other comments from the council? Okay, we have, I can't remember, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval and accept the zoning committee statement of consistency as our own. I'll go ahead and start with Mr. Driggs.
No.
Ms. Watlington?
No.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
All right, now Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
No.
Ms. Johnson?
No.
Mr. Newton?
No.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
I have the motion as 6 to 5 with the noes prevailing. No. I'm sorry, the backwards. I'm sorry, I wrote it the wrong way. I have yes, 6 to 5 with yes prevailing. All right, so that item is approved. The next item is item number 8, petition number 2019-179 by Ron Staley of Verde Homes for approximately 1 acre located near the southeast.
Yes, that was deferred.
Deferred. I don't know why they're not.
That's okay.
Got it.
That was a
sir.
late deferral, so that was,
Okay,
that's why it's not listed in the agenda that way.
I should make sure. Okay, so do we, item 9?
Item 9 was deferred as well, so we moved to 10.
10. The next item is petition 2020-2023 by Philip Neal Sparrow for approximately 10.9 acres located on the southern side of John Gladden Road, north of Wilkerson Boulevard, west of Sam Wilson, outside the city limits. The current zoning is residential manufactured housing in the Lake Wylie protected area and the lower Lake Wylie protected area. The proposed zoning is general industrial Lake Wylie protected area and lower Lake Wylie protected area. And the zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Do I have a motion to adopt the petition as well as the zoning committee statement of consistency?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Watlington and Mr. Driggs, is there any discussion or questions by the council? Hearing no discussions, Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem? Ms. Ajmira? Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Graham?
Yes.
That's 6 votes. Is there anyone in opposition to this petition?
Just one no.
Yes, Mr. Winston votes no. So with that, the petition is approved. The next item, 11, is this 11 is sending it. We have a motion. We have to vote on a recommendation to send, whether or not to send this back to the zoning committee, petition 2020-035 by CCP University for approximately 49 acres located on the south side of IBM Drive. The following changes were made after the zoning committee. Petitioner revised site plan to coordinate the street network connection with rezoning petition 2020-102. The petitioner revised the site plan to dedicate right-of-way for a future 8-foot planting strip and a 12-foot multi-use path along the site's IBM Drive. The staff recommends that these changes are minor and do not warrant going back. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion to not send back.
Second.
All right, Mr. Eggleston and Mr. Driggs. So with that, we'll start. Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
That's 6. So with that, 9. Geez, I cannot get 6 and 9 straight right. All right, Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
And Ms. Ajmira? Mayor Pro Tem? Mr.
Yes.
Okay, that's 9. So that motion passes, and we now go back to the petition. It is currently zoned single-family residential and research, and the proposed zoning is urban residential conditional and multifamily residential conditional. The staff and the zoning committee recommend approval. Do we have a motion to adopt as well as adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency?
So moved.
Ms. Johnson moves.
Second.
Mr. Eggleston seconds. Are there any questions?
Mayor, I do have a comment, if it's okay.
All right, certainly. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I wanted to thank the developer on this project as well, because they really worked with the committee. I wanted to express my appreciation.
All right, so any further questions or comments? Okay, hearing no questions or comments, we'll begin with Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Watlington,
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston,
Yes.
Mr. Driggs,
Yes.
Ms. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira, Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
All right, that is 6. Is there anyone in opposition to this petition? Hearing no one in opposition, the motion passes. Next item is item number 12, petition number 2020-055. This, too, is a recommendation that we consider whether or not we should send it back. So this is petition for approximately 27.9 acres on the east side of IBM, west of I-85, south of WT Boulevard, Harris Boulevard. The petitioner revised the site plan to commit to providing improvements that meet Chapter 17 ordinance requirements per Section 19-173 of the City Code, along with the site's WT Harris Boulevard frontage. The staff believes these changes are minor and do not recommend that they go back to the Zoning Commission. We need 9 votes on a
Motion to not
motion.
send back.
Second.
We have Mr. Eggleston and Mr. Driggs with the motion. I'll start off with the Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira. Ms. Ajmira? All right, Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Newton? Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
That's 9 votes in the affirmative, so it will not go back to the zoning committee. Now, do we have a motion to adopt the zoning committee statement of recommendation, zoning and staff recommendation, and the zoning committee statement of consistency as our own?
So moved.
Ms. Johnson moves.
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll start off with Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
That's 6. Is there anyone that objects to this petition? Hearing no objection, the petition passes. Item 13, is this one of those to be, yes. All right, we have another decision that requires 9 votes to not send it back or to whatever. Okay. I'm sorry. Item 13 is petition 2020-57 by Lakemont Property Investors, and it's a proposal to rezone approximately 44 acres west of I-85 and east of Sam Wilson from the lower Lake Wylie area, protected area. And it's being changed from single-family residential to general industrial with the same protected areas as well as the airport noise overlay. We need a motion. The changes that were made after the zoning commissions is add an optional provision to allow vehicular circulation and maneuvering between the building and the street to accommodate valet parking rideshare service. A new note, the second being a new note to install a 4-inch caliper street trees along Euclid Avenue pending approval of urban forestries and other agencies. If approvals cannot be granted, then the street trees to be installed along the frontage on Euclid Avenue shall only be required to meet the minimum caliper specifications of the ordinance.
Motion to not send back.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll start with Mr. Winston.
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Is there anyone that objects to this motion? Then the motion is passed unanimously. We now go to the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept the zoning committee's recommendation as well as the statement of consistency for this petition?
Motion to adopt and approve.
Second.
All right. So with that, we will go, any discussion? Mr. Eggleston, followed by Ms. Watlington.
Just a quick note on this one to thank the Dilworth Community Association as well as the developer for continuing to work on the outstanding issues. We had a couple of things that were not ironed out when we had the hearing last month, but you read I think, did I get mixed up here? We've got the Lakemont up, but you read the changes to Hanover. Which one are we?
I thought that we were on item 14,
That's what you
Hanover.
read the changes to, but
Yes.
on the screen, we're looking at Lakemont, and now I'm wondering if I am ahead one.
Did I skip Lakemont? Dave?
Well, I retract everything I said.
We on 13.
Still on
2020-057. We can always do
You're right, I
14.
read the changes. Can we just go ahead and do 14 since I read
Yes,
the
and we can
changes
come
and
back.
have all of that? So let's just do 14 and then I'll go back to 13.
Perfect.
All right.
Then what I have said stands.
Okay.
That was confusing. Yeah, Dilworth Community Association and the petitioner continued to hammer out the details on this one, so I appreciate both of them staying at the table to get it to a place where everybody was comfortable with it, as well as the folks at Royal Court, so thank you.
All right, Ms. Watlington, were you just going to let me know I was on 14 and skipped 13? Thank you for that. Is there any other discussion? We're on 14, Hanover Limited Partnership, okay? All right. Do we have a motion to accept this as well as the statement of a consistency for the zoning committee?
So moved.
All right, so we have,
Need a second?
I need Mr. Driggs, yes? Mr. Eggleston? All right, so a motion and a second. So we'll start. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira? Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
That's 6 votes. With that, is there anyone that objects to this petition? Hearing no objection, that petition is approved. Now let's go to item number 13.
Mayor,
Yes?
I just want to make sure that I didn't miss it. Do we vote on the not to send the changes back?
Yes, we did that. I read the wrong, that's when I read the
Did vote
wrong
on it.
set.
Okay,
So
thank
now
you.
we're going back to 13, which also has been, must be voted on with the revised site plan. So 2020 by Lakemont Properties, 44 acres, residential, single-family residential, the Lake Wiley Protected Area, Airport Noise Overlay, and Critical Area. And Lower Lake Wiley Protected Area and Critical Area. The zoning committee has changes since the zoning committee had approved this. The changes were, the revised site plan was submitted showing a future planting strip and sidewalk. We need 9 votes to pass this motion. Do we have a motion to?
Motion to not send back.
All right.
Second.
Mr. Diggs is second the motion. So, any questions or comments about the motion to send back or not send back? All right, so we'll start. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira? Mr. Bakari? Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Newton? Mr. Winston?
Yes.
I think that gives me 8. Ms. Ajmira? Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
That gives me 9. All right.
Yes, Madam Mayor, yes, different.
Okay, thank you. We now have 9. Now we go to the actual, the zoning committee, and the staff recommends approval. Do we have a motion to approve this petition?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Watlington and Mr. Driggs. All right, any discussion on the adoption of the petition? Ms. Watlington?
I just wanted to note that this one in particular does have community support. If you look at the location of this one, it is consistent with what the community feels like should go in this particular area.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Newton? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
That's 6 votes. Is there anyone that objects to this petition? Hearing no objection, the petition passes. We've already passed 14. We will go to 15. So 15 has not been deferred, and I don't believe it has any amendments or revisions. All right, let's go with a straight-up vote here. Rezoning petition 2020-060 by West Plan Investors for approximately 11 acres located east of I-85. It's in District 4. Current zoning is a commercial center. The requested zoning is urban residential conditional. The staff and the zoning commission recommend adoption of this petition. Do I have a motion to adopt the petition and approve the zoning committee statement of consistency as our own?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Ms. Johnson and Mr. Driggs, is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll start off with Mr. Driggs.
Yes.
Ms. Watlington.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston.
Yes.
Mr. Winston.
Yes.
Mr. Newton. Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
That's 6 votes. Is there anyone that objects to this petition being approved? Hearing no objection, the petition is approved unanimously. The next item is item 16. Is that deferred? I don't think it's
Yes, 16 was deferred.
deferred. I thought so. Item 17. Okay, item 17, petition 2020-067 by Tarana Nova Group for approximately 2.9 acres located in the 2400 block of Mecklenburg Avenue in District 1. The current zoning is residential with 3 units. The requested zoning is urban residential conditional. The zoning committee and staff recommend approval. Do I have a motion to adopt the statement, to adopt the recommendation and accept the zoning committee statement of consistency as our own?
Motion to adopt and approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll start with Mr. Eggleston.
Just a reminder that this petition does include a preservation covenant in the deal that will ensure the preservation of the Victor Shaw House in perpetuity, which is the home of Mayor Lyle's predecessor about 60 years before you were mayor. Mr. Shaw, Mayor Shaw, resided there. So glad to be saving this significant home.
I think Mayor Shaw would be glad to sit in my chair. I certainly would be glad to kind of go home as well. So, some days. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll start. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
That's 6 votes. Is there anyone that objects to this petition? Hearing no objection, then the petition passes unanimously. Item 18 is a question about whether or not we want to send it back to the petition, to the zoning committee or not. It's petition 2020-072 by no, this is not correct. Is that, I've got item 18 is by Michael Moulton.
That's correct. 2020-072, Michael Moulton.
Okay. In our book, it says Freemore.
Okay.
Okay, which one is it? Michael Moulton? Is Freemore the company or something? Okay, so Freemore is the developer and Michael Moulton is the person?
Yeah, the staff may have just listed it incorrectly. So Freemore LLC is what's in your book, yes.
Freemore LLC is the correct
The owner and the
usage.
petitioner is Michael Moulton, as on the
Yes.
cover
Okay.
page.
Thank you. So this is approximately 0.48 acres located on Freedom Drive. It's in District 3. The current zoning is light industrial. The proposed zoning is mixed-use development district optional. We need a motion with 9 votes to approve the following changes made after the zoning committee's recommendation. A revised site plan was submitted showing a 22-foot setback to accommodate a future 8-foot planting strip, 12-foot multi-use path, and 2-foot sidewalk utility easement. The staff recommends that we continue to act on this tonight. So let's start. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Did you have a motion?
Do you have a motion?
Motion to not send back.
Oh, we need a motion.
Second.
Sorry, a motion and a second not to send it back. So with that, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
All right, that's 9 votes to not send it back. Is there anyone that opposes this motion? Hearing no one in opposition, the motion passes unanimously. Now we'll go to the actual zoning. Is there a motion to approve the zoning petition and adopt the statement of consistency as our own?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
All right, with that, the motion, is anyone in opposition to this petition? Hearing no one in opposition, it is approved unanimously. The next one is item number 19, and it is petition 2020-074 by Redwood USA for approximately 21 acres located off Harris Houston Road. It's in District 4. The proposed zoning is, or the current zoning is single-family residential. The proposed zoning is multifamily residential conditional. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Do I have a motion to approve the petition and adopt the statement of consistency as our own?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to say something.
Yes, of course. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I want to thank the developer and also Lakeisha Hall and the CDOT staff. They really tried to work with the residents. The residents are requesting sidewalks. And right now, although we weren't able to accommodate that right now, there's a lot of consideration and communication with the community. So I just wanted to say thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt and approve and adopt the statement of consistency. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
All right, does anyone object to this motion being, this approval of this motion? Hearing no one in objection, the motion passes unanimously. The next item is, huh? Oh, it's my favorite, you're right. Okay, the next item is item 20, rezoning petition 2020-075 by Matt Ami Homes, approximately 19 acres located on the south side of Ridge Road. It's in District 4. The current zoning is single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is multifamily residential conditional. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Do I have a motion to approve and adopt the statement of consistency?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll go ahead and move forward on the motion. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Newton? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
That's 6 votes. Does anyone object to this motion? Hearing none, no objections, the motion passes unanimously. Item 21 is a petition by the City of Charlotte Aviation Department for approximately 19 acres located to the north and south of Old Dowd Road, just west of 485. It's outside the city limits. The current zoning is light industrial, Lower Lake Wylie protected area, single-family residential, Lower Lake Wylie protected area. The proposed zoning is general industrial, Lower Lake Wylie protected area. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Do I have a motion to accept the zoning committee's recommendation and statement of consistency?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Watlington, Mr. Driggs. Is there any discussion on the petition? Hearing no discussion, we will start off with Mr. Driggs.
Yes.
Ms. Watlington.
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira.
Yes.
Is there anyone that objects to this motion? Hearing no objection, it passes unanimously. Item 22, petition 2020-080 by the Courtyard at Park Road for approximately 2.3 acres located on the west side of Park Road. It's in District 1. The current zoning is neighborhood business. The proposed zoning is neighborhood services. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Is there any changes or deferral? Okay. With that, do I have a motion to adopt the statement of consistency and approve the petition?
Motion to adopt and approve.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
All right. Is there anyone that objects to this petition being adopted? Hearing no objection, this petition passes unanimously. The next item is 23, petition 2020-084 by D.R. Horton for approximately 9 acres located on the west side of Reams Road, north of Sunset Road. This is in District 2. Proposed zoning was single-family residential. The current zoning is single-family. The proposed zoning is multifamily residential conditional. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of this petition. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Graham, a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, we'll start off. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson? All right.
Yes.
Okay, that's 6. Anyone object to this petition? Okay, if there are no objections, then this petition passes unanimously. Item 24, rezoning petition 2020-087 by Plainwood LLC for approximately 7.8 acres located on the east side of Brookshire. It's in District 2. The current zoning is single-family residential. The proposed zoning is multifamily residential conditional. The zoning committee and the staff recommend approval of the petition. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation and the statement of consistency? Mr. Graham made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
All right, is there anyone in opposition to this petition? Hearing no one in opposition, the petition passes unanimously. The next item that you have in your agenda is the information on transportation projects that are currently underway. And now we'll move to the zoning items for this hearing, all right? I just wanted you to know, out of our zoning hearings, we have 3 with opposition, so those will come up, I guess, at some point. In this case, we will start with the staff presentation, and then the proponents, if they're opponents, then a follow-up, and then questions by the council. All right, so item number 26 has been withdrawn. Item 27 has been deferred. Item 28. All right, so item 28 is petition 2019-085 by American Asset Corporation for approximately 23.8 acres located on the south side of West Arrowwood Road, west of Whitehall Executive Center Drive. It's in District 3. The current zoning is mixed-use development optional. The requested zoning is mixed-use development optional with a site plan amendment. The staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution, and now we'll hear from the staff for presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2019-085 is just under 24 acres, as mentioned, on West Arrowwood Road, just off the I-485 interchange. This petition is currently zoned Mud O, and the proposed zoning this evening is a Mud O site plan amendment. This petition is part of the Steel Creek Area Plan, which was adopted in 2012. That plan does recommend residential, office, and/or retail land uses for the site. The proposal in front of us this evening is for a multifamily community with no more than 352 dwelling units, as well as any incidental or accessory uses. We do have some optional provisions that would permit parking and vehicular circulation to be between the buildings and the required streets. We are also looking at an 8-foot sidewalk and 8-foot planting strip along public street frontages within the site, architectural design standards, as well as the construction of an amenity area, including a pool and clubhouse. There will also be a trail around Moody Lake, which is just off-site between this property and the Topgolf facility off Savoy Corporate Drive. And they also talk about full cutoff lighting fixtures that will have a max height of 21 feet. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. We do have some outstanding issues related to transportation, site and building design, and some technical revisions to work through. It is consistent with the Steel Creek Area Plan. And again, we do recommend approval, and we'll be happy to take any questions following presentations from the petitioner and the community.
All right, this petition has both opponents and proponents. Mr. Carmichael and Mr. David Jarrett, Mr. Paul Hendren, and Nathan Tidd are speaking in favor of the petition, and Amy Rickers is speaking in opposition. So you all have, both the proponents and the opponents have 10 minutes, and you don't have to use them all. And then we will have 2 minutes for the petitioner to address the opposition. So, Mr. Carmichael, are you kicking this off? Mr. Carmichael?
He's on. Let me find him.
I'm sorry.
Oh, here we go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, we're fine.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'll kick it off. Thank you. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of City Council and the Zoning Committee, my name is John Carmichael, and I represent the petitioner, American Asset Corporation. With me tonight are David Jarrett and Paul Herndon of the petitioner, and Nathan Tidd of Kimley Horn and Associates. They're available to answer your questions. The site contains approximately 23.89 acres and is a portion of an approximately 60-acre site that council rezoned to Mud O in 2009. Next slide. Next slide. The site is located on West Arrowwood Road, which is to the right of the green line right there. It's that curved road. West Arrowwood Road is just east of I-45. And the site is located on West Arrowwood Road, generally on the southeast quadrant of the I-45 West Arrowwood Road interchange. Topgolf is located just north of the site, which you can see up in the left-hand corner. And the site is adjacent to Moody Lake, which is in blue. Next slide. Savoy Corporate Drive is that road right between Topgolf and the lake. The petitioner owns the rezoning site, which is, and the land between the site and Savoy Corporate Drive. And the petitioner has owned the land in excess of 30 years. The 60.3 acres that was rezoned to the Mud O zoning district in 2009 is located essentially south of Moody Lake on this aerial photograph. Towards the bottom of the slide, you can see a multifamily community. That was part of this rezoning in 2009. The petitioner sold that site to a third party who, as we understand it, and developed this multifamily community and sold it to the current owner of the multifamily community. Next slide. The site's currently zoned MUD-O, as Dave indicated, and the rezoning site is outlined in red on this slide. You've got MUD-O to the north, BPCD, which is a business park district. To the north, BPCD and I-1CD. To the east and to the south, you've got R17 MFCD. I will say across I-45 to the west, you see O2CD and I-1CD. That is Whitehall Corporate Center, and that is owned by and was developed by the petitioner. Next slide. I'm going to briefly, because I think it's instructive, go over the currently approved rezoning plan for the site. Next slide. This is the current rezoning plan for the site. The 60.3 acres is outlined in the dash and heavy line there. The dash line goes through the center of Moody Lake. You can see there are a lot of buildings proposed for the site underneath, under this rezoning plan. And I'll go over that in a little more detail. This is once again, this is the currently approved rezoning plan for the site from 2009. Next slide. This is a really difficult or grainy photo, but this was an exhibit with that 2009 rezoning plan. You can see it proposed a bunch of tall buildings and a very urban and dense development. Next slide. So briefly, under the currently approved rezoning plan for the 60 acres, up to 1.8 million square feet of office uses could be developed. 40,000 square feet of freestanding retail uses could be developed, and 400 multifamily dwelling units could be developed. I think about 300 of those multifamily dwelling units were developed by the third party to whom the petitioner sold some of the 60.3 acres to. Additionally, up to 50,000 square feet of ground floor commercial uses could be located in the office buildings proposed for the site. Those retail and restaurant uses would serve the office buildings that were planned for the site. Next slide. Once again, it's going to be a dense urban development with structured parking. 2 buildings could be up to 180 feet and 12 stories in height. 6 could be up to 120 feet in height and 8 stories. And the remaining buildings could be 5 stories and 85 feet in height. Next slide. So what's being requested tonight is a site plan amendment to the currently approved rezoning plan for almost a 24-acre portion of the 60-acre site to accommodate a maximum of 352 multifamily dwelling units on the site. If this petition were approved, it would be the only permitted use on the site. Next slide. This is just from Charlotte Explorer. It shows the land use plan recommendation for the site. Next slide. And as Mr. Pett mentioned, the Still Creek Area Plan recommends residential, office, and retail. And this request is consistent with the land use recommendation of the Still Creek Area Plan. Next slide. So I'll briefly look at the site plan. Next slide. This is what you would find online with the planning staff. This is the rezoning plan. Next slide. And then this is the rezoning plan overlaid on an aerial for a little more context. The petitioner would build a public street from West Airwood Road into the site. It'd be a 2-lane road, and it would comply with the requirements of the area plan. The multifamily buildings, the proposed multifamily buildings are in brown. And then you can see the proposed amenity for this multifamily community next to Moody Lake. As Dave mentioned, architectural standards for the proposed buildings are a part of petitioner's conditional rezoning plan. The petitioner would install a minimum 12-foot wide pedestrian walking trail adjacent to and around the entire perimeter of Moody Lake. It's outlined sort of in yellow on this plan. Although not shown on the plan, the petitioner would install a minimum 12-foot wide pedestrian walking trail through the open space, which is north of the lake, to the sidewalk along West Airwood Road. So there'd be a 12-foot wide pedestrian trail connecting the public sidewalk on West Airwood Road to the 12-foot wide trail around the perimeter, the entire perimeter of Moody Lake. Petitioner would also install picnic tables and benches in 3 locations near the lake and adjacent to the trail. The thought being to provide an amenity not only to the apartment community, but to the community at large. The petitioner would install a right turn lane, eastbound right turn lane on West Airwood Road into the site, and a westbound directional crossover or leftover into the site from West Airwood Road and onto the public street that it would construct within the site. Planning staff does recommend approval. We will address the remaining, I think there are only 2 outstanding site plan issues this week with planning staff. I say 2, there were initially 3. The County Park and Recreation asked the petitioner to consider dedicating 2 acres of the site for a public park. I talked to Kevin Brickman last week. I sent him our rezoning plan, and after he became aware of the trail system, he said that they were good, and we appreciate that. We have met with the Still Creek Residents Association on 2 occasions, with the most recent meeting having been held on September 1, 2020. I appreciate the time that they have given us to discuss this matter. We are happy to answer any questions. Once again, I've got David Jarrett, Paul Herndon of the petitioner, and Nathan Titt of Kimley Horn with me. Thank you for your consideration.
All right. How many minutes, Madam Clerk? How many? 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes. Would anyone else on the proponent side like to speak?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Ms. Rickers, Amy Rickers?
Hello.
Hi, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, members of staff, zoning committee members, and planning commission members, I appreciate your time and the opportunity to address you this evening on this item. As was stated, my name is Amy Rickers. I'm here to represent Bell Whitehall Limited Partnership. This client owns the Whitehall Park Apartments between Arrowwood Road and I-485 west of Whitehall Executive Center Drive. This apartment complex is directly adjacent to the property in the rezoning petition under consideration. And both the apartment complex itself and this property that's under the rezoning, as you heard Mr. Carmichael say, were part of the rezoning petition in 2008 as 2008-053. Next slide, please. We're here because the proposed rezoning is inconsistent with what the City Council was promised in 2008 and approved in 2009 as the Whitehall Corporate Center Phase 2. It's also inconsistent with what Whitehall, my client, was promised when it purchased Whitehall Park Apartments as to what the area was going to be developed into. Furthermore, despite staff's recommendation that it is consistent with the Steel Creek plan, we would suggest that it is actually inconsistent with the Steel Creek area plan, in that while it does, the Steel Creek area plan does use the idea of mixing different uses. In particular, when it focused on this development itself, it focused on the need to have these integrated together rather than one type of use. Next slide, please. Again, you've seen this in Mr. Carmichael's presentation. This was the original area that was proposed in 2008 for rezoning, the 60 acres that was rezoned to meadow. Next slide, please. And this is an aerial to kind of show you, again, what that area was like. And you'll see in this aerial the Whitehall Park Apartments that my client owns and operates there. That is 298 units. Notably, in the original 60-acre rezoning petition, this was the only area of that rezoning petition that was designated for multifamily use and multifamily development. And it was subsequently, as you can see, developed in that 11-acre area as a multifamily use. Next slide, please. In 2009, the Charlotte City Council approved that rezoning petition for the Whitehall Corporate Center Phase 2. As the name suggests, it was intended to be a corporate center as well, and that was what was intended and what was approved. The City Council was promised mixed use, 1.8 million square feet of office space, 400 units of multifamily housing, urban open space development, as well as 40,000 square feet of standalone retail. The very envelope of multifamily, mixed use development and something that is very appealing to the city and was later adopted into the Steel Creek Area Plan. Next slide, please. The Steel Creek Area Plan set the stage for managing the future development. It was compliant with the centers, corridors, and wedges framework that the city envisioned, and it was Steel Creek's vision for what they would develop in that area. Next slide, please. But more importantly, the development at this very site was integrated into that plan. So when the Steel Creek Plan says that it was establishing a land use pattern that would give opportunities for live, work, and recreate in close proximity, it was utilizing that as to this particular site. It recommended a mix of residential, office, and retail land uses in appropriate activity centers where the Moody Lake Office Park is located. That is how this site is referred to in the Steel Creek Area Plan, as the Moody Lake Office Park. The plan itself recognized that the Moody Lake development would give these mixed development uses. It noted the vast amount of office space and retail space that was supposed to be listed, as well as the 400 units of multifamily. Next slide, please. Since the approval of that 2000 rezoning petition, the Whitehall Park departments were developed, almost 300 of the 400 allotted units. In the petition currently before the City Council, 24 of the acres in that remaining 60 acres is proposed to be redeveloped. When this rezoning petition was filed in May 2019, it was for 28 acres, and it included mixed uses. It had multifamily, it had hotel uses, and it had retail and service uses as well. Next slide, please. In December, that rezoning application was revised. It was lowered to approximately 24 acres, but the new version, it removes the hotel building and it removes all of the retail use as well, and only asks for the multifamily units. In that version, it was 322 multifamily units. Next slide, please. The red outline on this aerial is to show you what remains of the 60 acres. In that 60 acres, almost half of it is being requested to be rezoned for this multifamily use, leaving only half of that, approximately half of that 50 acres that is left for any additional development. Next slide, please. And I apologize, the number on here is incorrect. I'm just finding out that this is actually going back to 352 units that is being proposed. So that would mean that there are 352 units, and that would be 250 units over the initial rezoning request in 2008. So that's quite an increase in multifamily units. It's like doubling what's out there already. And further, it removes the hotel, office, and retail uses. This is redefining this area of development as not a mixed-use development, but rather a multifamily development over the 60 acres. Approving this rezoning request is going to undermine the work in progress of both the citizens in the Steel Creek area and their hard work with the city in developing the Steel Creek Area Plan. It's also going to undermine the vision of the city in moving towards a live, work, play, a less automobile-centric living space. And I don't want to be coy, my client is not against development in this area by any means. And in fact, when they purchased the property, they expected that there would be development in this area, but rather they are concerned about the way in which, the phasing in which this development is occurring. If we simply saturate a multifamily market without giving the infrastructure and the other amenities to support that, it will undermine the multifamily development itself. And so we would just ask the City Council to consider whether developing additional multifamily housing on this site, when that was not what was proposed originally, is going to be beneficial to the city and the area, or if rather the petition should either be denied or the petitioner should be required to do other development first, make other uses available in order to support a multifamily request. And with that, I'll be available for questions if you have anything further for me.
You completed, Mr. Carmichael, you have 2 minutes for your rebuttal.
Yes. Yeah, Wendy, could you pull up my PowerPoint real quick and go to the last slide? Thank you, Mayor. I have an exhibit I want to share, if I can. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks. Okay, yeah, Wendy, could you just go to the last slide? Thank you so much. So, it was a 60-acre site that was rezoned in 2009. There's a 21-acre portion of the 60 acres that's still available to be developed with office and ground floor retail and restaurant uses. And that's the area in pink on this exhibit. The 21 acres is still available to be developed under the existing plan. To the left of the pink, you'll see a gray hatched area. That's other land owned by the petitioner. If you combine that land with the area in pink, then there's 33 acres the petitioner can develop for office uses, in the case of the pink area for retail and other commercial uses. So that's 33 acres. The petitioner will continue to actively and diligently market this property for office and ground floor retail and restaurant uses. The petitioner is a very successful office and retail developer, been in the Charlotte market for decades, but this property was rezoned in 2009, and there has not been much interest to date despite their efforts, but they'll continue to make efforts. The petitioner did not sell Ms. Ricker's clients, did not sell the adjacent multifamily site to Ms. Ricker's clients, and they certainly haven't made any representations to her client regarding what would go on the site. Neither the petitioner's marketing materials nor the rezoning plan suggested a lifestyle center of any sort. It suggested that 95% of the square footage would be office, and there'd be some incidental freestanding retail, 40,000 square feet, and some ground floor retail. The petitioner has owned the site, adjacent parcels of land, Whitehall Corporate Center, and other developments in Steel Creek for years. It's a long-time owner of property and will continue to be because the petitioner is a long-time holder of property it owns and develops. Petitioner is committed to the area and is certainly interested in making sure that the site and the surrounding area is developed in the right way.
Okay, Mr. Carmichael?
Speak to this commitment.
Mr. Carmichael?
Yes, ma'am, I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, now we're going to open it up to the council for questions of the petitioner. I'm going to start with Ms. Watlington and then Mr. Driggs.
Thank you. I've got a couple quick questions. Can you, if you could pull back up Mr. Carmichael's presentation he just had with the pink and the gray area?
That Wendy's got that.
And if you could go, please, Wendy, to the, yes. I want to make sure I understand, because in the previous conversations that we've had on this and with the community, there seemed to be a bit of a discrepancy on this gray part, the hatched gray. Is that portion of the site buildable?
Paul Herndon, you're on the line. Can you answer that question, or Dave? Yeah, I'm sure that it is, but I'm going to let them confirm it.
Yeah, not only is it buildable, the site right next to the lake is fully graded out. When we were working with Topgolf to put in the street and put in their site, we went ahead and pre-graded that site to be able to try and market it even more easily to a hotel use or restaurant uses, which we have the rights to do there. It's a smaller site, so that's really what would fit. And then the site up on Airwood Road, that's crosshatch. We've been marketing that for 20 years for an office building. We've had a lot of people talk to us who just never had anything land. As John pointed out, we have almost 1 million square feet of office on the opposite side of 45. So we're out in this market constantly marketing for that use. It's just not been something that's landed yet, but we will continue to do so. So those sites are buildable, and we've been marketing them for many years.
Okay. Then my follow-up question for the pink area, considering what you just shared, my question is, and it may be for staff, had the pink area been developed first, would that have required a rezoning? No? Okay, so then is it fair to assume that if the pink area was something that was marketable, you would have done it first?
We market the entire site, so we really kind of first come, first serve. We've had some of the large single-tenant office building users that have wanted to have maybe visibility from 485 talk to us through the years. And if they would have wanted to come on one of those sites next to the freeway, we would have extended the infrastructure and built the building. Again, we've had no one land yet out on this side for office, but we market the whole site for wherever the user wants to go. We're more than open to making that happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm a little bit concerned about this particular petition simply because as I think about the work that we're doing with the comp plan, and it seems that there were intentional efforts made with the Still Creek area plan that the community bought into, that this would be a mixed-use area. I certainly can appreciate the market conditions that would require you or compel you to want to do something with this particular parcel. I just worry that even as we talk about not having a lot of space for industrial use in particular, or I'll say light industrial, because I think that that might be something that could be attractive at this site. I'm just a little bit worried that we seem to be moving in a direction where even with our area plans that have come within 10 years, we're making adjustments to them that will ultimately change the intended character or fabric of this particular area. So that's, I'm sorry.
Light industrial is forbidden to be built in this particular area of the city. So it's a good point. In fact, it's something we even looked at as an alternative years ago, doing like a business flex product here, but it's not allowed within the city's plans. And the ability to do mixed use is still a very important aspect of what we're trying to do here.
I understand. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, sir. I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate that. I do have one additional question as it relates to the housing here. What is the mix of this housing? Is it all market rate, or do you have any affordable units here?
It would be a market rate apartment project, mostly 1- and 2-bedroom apartments.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Wattington? Okay, Mr. Driggs?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Rickers, I was listening attentively to your statement on behalf of your client in opposition. A lot of the points you made had to do with the fact that this is different from a decision that was made in 2008 and 2009. I'm not sure from a land use standpoint that would guide our final decision, because time has gone by, and as we heard, the commercial realities there changed. So I don't regard it by itself as being unacceptable that we would decide to approve a different use or a change in those plans. And any kind of commercial understandings or differences you might have with the petitioner are also not really land use considerations. So I guess what I'm interested in hearing from you is, in what ways is your client adversely affected in the context of how we make land use decisions? I mean, we'll think about things like if a high-rise building goes up next to a single-family home, and that's offensive to the owners of the home, or if there is a traffic situation that you think would have adverse consequences on the tenants of the apartments that you have. But the fact that this is not in accordance with an understanding that was never rose to the level of contract and wouldn't be for us to decide is not really a land use issue. So could you just explain in land use terms why your client believes that we should not approve this?
Certainly, I appreciate the opportunity to respond. So while I understand that whatever representations or beliefs we may have had based on what was passed in 2009 may not be contractual, it certainly guides development throughout the city. And I think the city council would agree that when they have approved rezonings and planning these area plans that show how an area will be developed, that's what encourages your developers and your investors to come into those areas. That's what encourages the building up of those communities. And so certainly when this area was designed and was envisioned to be a mixed-use development project, I think that that is effectual overall in land use planning. As to the direct effect on my client as a property owner, in addition to our almost 300 units right there in this initial rezoning package, across Whitehall Executive Park Drive there, or Executive Center Drive, there is another multifamily project of over 300 units that has been developed there. So you've already got quite a mix and quite a lot of stock in multifamily housing in this area. And the concern that my client has as the developer of these types of projects is that if you saturate the market too much with too many units but haven't developed the infrastructure, the support, the resources, the entertainment, the retail markets, the office space that these people can work at, then they start to lose their value. They lose their stock. They become harder to rent because there's too much available in the area with too few other resources around. And as the city tries to move towards that live, work, play atmosphere, I think those are important considerations.
Thank you. I'm certainly prepared to discuss this with you a little further offline. I would just suggest to you that you be clear about what obligations you think we have to ourselves as a result of actions we took in the past, what obligations you think we have to your client, and how your client is adversely affected in land use terms by any decision we might make about this. And I'm not prejudging the decision. I can just tell you that from what you told us, when I think about the kind of land use criteria that we apply, I don't yet see a case that says that we should not do this because of concerns of your clients. There may be other reasons why we would choose not to. But I'm happy to talk to you again offline, and hope that you'll think some more about what I just said. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right. Anyone else?
Ms. Johnson.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, thank you. I think Ms. Ricker's concerns only underscore what we've spoken to Taiwo about in the need for interim area plans. While this developer purchased and built their development around 2008, there may be some that bought and are developing in 2018 or 2017 or something more recent. So, and like Ms. Ricker said, that is a consideration when property is built and the developer has that vision. So I am asking again if we can have some type of interim plan, public can see an interim plan so they see where we're moving towards, because some of these uses are going to change, and we know that. So I just think that in order to seek transparency and communication with the public, we need to have something in the interim so that we have something to lean on when we're making these decisions legally, but also so the public knows what the vision is for the city.
All right. Any other from the virtual side, Ms. Jackson? All right, Ms. Watlington?
I just want to underscore what Councilmember Johnson just said, because I can appreciate my colleagues' comments, but I think that fundamentally this is a land use issue, because in my mind, the point of this proceeding is to plan our city. And we've talked about moving from being a deal-making city to a plan-making city, but if people cannot rely on our plans as they make investments in our community, I would go so far as to say we don't need plans. And I'd like to understand whether, I guess from the Assistant City Manager, Ms. Jayoba, I'd like to understand how we can stake our claim on comprehensive plan that's coming if we have a plan as recent as 2012 that we've made zoning petition decisions upon, that people have built upon, and yet we continue to adopt statements of consistency that appear to override the plan. Can you help me understand what's going to look different as we go forward?
So is your question is, if you have a comprehensive plan, what will be different?
Yes, when we go through these plans, and we clearly are making decisions that are different than what was aligned to at the time of the plan, how then are we going to look at the comprehensive plan and expect that when we assign place types to the areas, that those place types are going to remain?
Yes, so number one, you do have a 2012 area plan is now recent, especially in a fast-growing city with all the associated transportation issues, Steel Creek especially. But the geography is also not very helpful because of where it's located. So even if Steel Creek itself, with its area plan, is current today, you have to be mindful of mobility between South Carolina and here. However, though, as we walk through the place type effort, what that does for the community is it allows them to have a say in what they envision their community to look like now and in the foreseeable future. That place map, that place type, however, will eventually give council, you will not have to necessarily do as many rezoning as you will be doing, because then the community knows what it wants. It's codified in the place type. Excuse me. The developer also understands what the community's vision is as enshrined in that place type and, of course, in the comprehensive plan. Therefore, there will be no need for them to be coming forward for a rezoning in the future, because then unless they want to change their land use, which the council may say, well, we just adopted this comprehensive plan with its place type, we will not necessarily support that. And so the goal behind the comprehensive plan and the place type is obviously to update what we have today, which is old, but also to be able to show in graphic forms, which you don't necessarily have today, what an area is supposed to look like, what types of uses allowed in those areas, what amount of traffic that will generate specific to that particular area. And so you will have more information and more details than what you have today with the area plan document. But again, I go back to what Ms. Johnson said. While I want to really be able to give council some guidance to make a decision, I also don't want us to rush the comprehensive planning process, because then it puts us back to where we are today, where we're piecemealing different parts of the city and really building them differently. We will work towards getting you some guidance, but I want us to be as careful as possible that we're not trying to being reactive, and rather than letting the comprehensive plan itself overall being responsive as we see things happen. It's not going to get rid of rezoning, but it will at least allow the community to know what it wants to see, and then work the developer to work along with the community as to what is laid out in that place type. So that will be the main difference. We don't have place types today.
So I'm going to push back just a little bit. I know that the comprehensive plan, the intention is to review that every 5 years. When, to your point, 2012 seems like a long time ago, considering how the pace of our growth. Our growth is not slowing down. Is the intent then every 5 years to review the entire city? Because my concern is that places that maybe were not in the last 5-year cycle will then quickly have the same out-of-date considerations that you just talked about.
So the plan behind the comprehensive plan is that we will revise it or update it, so to speak, every 3 to 5 years. That's really what's standard for a comprehensive plan of that nature, that as things change, you want to make sure that as market changes, you want to make sure that you reflect that in your land use plan. We don't have that today, and that's why we have a lot of what is old.
All right, I have Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for Mr. Carmichael. Is he still on?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. So, Mr. Carmichael, you hear our discussion around the land use plan. Can you share your interpretation, please?
Yes, sir, I can. Thank you. So the current zoning, it's primarily office, I would say it's consistent with the Steel Creek area plan. The proposed zoning is also consistent with the Steel Creek area plan, as Mr. Pettin indicated, because it recommends residential, office, and retail. So in and of itself, and as a standalone petition for the 23.89 acres, this petition is consistent with the Steel Creek area plan that was adopted in 2012. If you look at the whole site that's on your screen now, that would be consistent too, because you've got entertainment with Topgolf, you've got you're going to have office, which around Moody Lake or some office type of use, and then at the bottom of the site, at least as shown on the site plan, you've still got MUD zoning that allows office and ground floor retail. So this area can still be a mixed-use area. And once again, the current petition is consistent with the rezoning, with the Steel Creek area plan. And another thing I do want to mention is an adjacent property owner doesn't have a vested right to the zoning of an adjacent piece of property. I mean, and I also want to make it clear that this petitioner made no representations to the adjacent property owner as to what would happen here. There's 100 multifamily units left on this site under the current entitlement. What this would do would allow an increase of about 252 units. So once again, I just want to stress that this petition by and of itself is consistent with the Steel Creek plan, as Mr. Pettin indicated, as is the current zoning of the site. And I'm happy to answer further questions. Thank you.
All right, I have, Mr. Mitchell, did you finish? All right, and then Mr. Driggs, and then Ms. Watlington.
I just wanted to say briefly, if we're going to start incorporating considerations from the 2040 comprehensive plan into our current decisions, which can happen because so many of our area plans are basically irrelevant, we need to communicate to petitioners very clearly what that looks like. We can't just sort of come into our meeting at a time like this and start introducing requirements or priorities that were not made known before. So I just hope that we will make sure that prior notice has been given before we give any account to that. Thank you.
Ms. Watlington?
I think that's what CM Johnson and I are asking for, but I also hear that Mr. Jayoba's concerns about letting the process happen. I do want to ask a question. Wendy, can you go back to that slide one more time? What is the requirement for acreage for something to be considered mixed use? Say if someone was to come back tomorrow in the pink area and ask for it to be rezoned to residential, because there is still acreage left that could potentially be office or commercial, is there a limit to residential? What constitutes mixed use? Is there a percentage or proportion?
There's no acreage requirement particularly for a mixed-use project. I think as we looked at this petition, we looked at the broader area overall, including the area being rezoned, and then the areas outside of that rezoning. As we looked at it, we saw still the ability to build retail, office, and some other uses, not just within this MUD-O property, but within the BP conditional area. We also had a pretty substantial mixed-use project just on the north side of Arrowwood and 485 that includes office, industrial, residential, and we also have existing office parks across the street and a large commercial center down the road that's connected via sidewalks. So we kind of looked at this as a more macro viewpoint of mixed use. Now, if we did get a petition to rezone that pink area to go all residential, we would probably start to have some concerns about the integrity of that overall intention. But this individual petition, we still felt maintained some of those mix of uses outside of the boundaries of the rezoning. But again, if we got a petition to change that pink area, that gray area to go all residential, that's where we would start to begin to have a little bit of a concern that was starting to erode the intention and the integrity of that mixed use plan away.
So to Mr. Driggs' point, then, as we think about the comp plan, I'm hoping that we can add a little more granularity or at least some direction to what that looks like.
Are there any other requests? Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I just want to add again, I'm not trying to hold this developer or ask them for any requirements or expectations that would be toward the 2040 comprehensive plan. I'm speaking in general that I spoke and I talked to Taiwo about this already. We do need to communicate to the developers and the public and the landowner. I know as a former realtor, if I'm selling a piece of property and my client, what's going to...
We can't, somebody's got their, got to mute. Ms. Johnson, we can't hear you very clearly.
Yeah, I know as a former realtor, if my client asks me, what are they going to be building over there? I can only rely on what the information is that's available. So I think just out of respect of transparency and integrity of the information that we're providing, if we can get something to the public for those plans that are going to change significantly sooner than later, it just helps everyone in making informed decisions. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing? Motion second. Let's see, we have Mr. Driggs?
Yeah.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Is anyone opposed to closing the public hearing? Hearing no one in opposition, we'll move to item number 29 for rezoning petition by Pulte Group for approximately 240 acres located on the west side of Steel Creek Road, south of Sledge and east of Shopton. It's in District 3. The current zoning is single-family with 3 units per acre. The proposed zoning is mixed-use and urban residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues. We'll start with the staff presentation. Mr. Pettin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2019-128 is about 240 acres on Sledge Road, Shopton Road, and does have frontage on Steel Creek Road as well. The existing zoning in this property is currently R3. The requested zoning is for MX3 mixed use as well as UR2 CD. The land use plan for this area, again, is the Steel Creek area plan from 2012. Does recommend residential uses up to 4 units per acre for the site. The petition itself is defined by 2 main development areas. Area A contains 550 single-family dwellings. No more than 200 of those would be attached or townhomes. Also accessory recreational uses. And Area B contains 150 age-restricted dwelling units. We do have transportation improvements incorporated into this project that are stemming from an approved traffic impact study. Those improvements would be made in 3 phases at a number of different intersections. CDOT will be commenting on some of those later on in this presentation. We also have a commitment to right-of-way dedication as well as an 8-foot planting strip and 12-foot multi-use paths on Sledge Road, Shopton Road, and Steel Creek Road along the site's frontage. Architectural standards incorporated into the plan, and a series of passive and active recreation spaces in development area A. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. As mentioned, we do have some outstanding issues related to transportation to still resolve. It is consistent with the Steel Creek area plan that recommends residential uses up to 4 dwelling units per acre. This comes in just under 4 dwelling units per acre, and so it is consistent with the Steel Creek area plan. Again, we'll be happy to take any questions following the presentation by the petitioner.
For this petition, we have Ms. Grant, Mr. Matrulli, Mr. Brow, Mr. Mandel, and Mr. Goddard. All are in favor of the petition, so you will have I don't have anyone in opposition.
No, we don't have any opposition. I did want to, before maybe we get into the petitioner, defer to CDOT real quick for some information on transportation. That's my oversight.
Ms. Hull, you're on.
All right,
Yes, ma'am. Could you bring back up that one slide that shows the intersections proposed to be improved? It should be part of the planning presentation.
give us just a couple of minutes, Ms. Hall.
Thank you. As we're getting ready to get that one slide up, so CDOT has been working very close with the state and CDOT in reviewing the TIS for this project. And planning provided an overview of the proposed density and intensity. And so as CDOT reviewed this petition, we realized that there are 15 intersections that are being improved. And 7 of those intersections are off-site. So what off-site means is that it's basically off-site from the project itself at other intersections. So as you can see with the graphic, we've called out specifically those intersections that are being improved as part of this proposal. 5 of those intersections actually aligned up with potential CIP projects. And so we feel very comfortable that this project is mitigating its trips, and it's also providing additional improvements, including adding new signals at intersections that don't have signalized intersections, adding additional left turn lanes to be able to reduce future delays in the area and allow for more through movements. And so that's just kind of the things that this project is providing in this area that is heavily being impacted by congestion, and also just working with the state and trying to expedite some projects along NC 160. And so that concludes CDOT's presentation.
Now we'll go to the petitioner, Ms. Grant.
Good evening, Mayor Lyles, Mayor Pro Tem Isel, members of council, and member of the zoning committee. Thank you for your time this evening.
Ms. Grant, I failed to remind myself to say 3 minutes.
That's fine. I'm waiting for them to pull my present. Here we go.
Okay.
Bridget Grant, Jeff Brown with Maureen Van Allen here tonight with Fred Matrulli with Pulte, as well as Matt Mandel with ESP and Randy Goddard with DRG. Staff did a great job highlighting our plan consistency and the lower proposed density, so I'm going to keep things fairly short. We are pleased to be here tonight with a positive recommendation from staff and with a letter of support from the Steel Creek Residents Association. We've been working for some time on this petition, and we think that with the numerous meetings that we've had with the Steel Creek Residents Association and with a well-attended virtual community meeting, we believe the residents have a better understanding of the degree of improvements and benefits that may be best reflected by having no speakers in opposition this evening. A quick summary, again, this is a change from R3 to MX3 to allow flexibility in lot sizes, which also has given us the ability to provide increased open space. The UR2 allows for a senior living component. When you look at just the single family or attached side, we're down to 2.4 dwelling units per acre. We have a robust street network, greenway connections, and extensive transportation improvements. Overall, the proposed trips are lower than what's permitted by right. The improvements that are being made to mitigate traffic are at a higher level than what you would get with a by right development, and several of the improvements go well beyond mitigation. As Lakeisha mentioned, we are making improvements at 15 intersections and access points. So with that, I'm just going to close by saying we think we are clearly utilizing the conditional rezoning process as intended to raise the bar. We intend to work to address any of the outstanding issues, and we appreciate everyone's time tonight and look forward to answering any of your questions.
All right, Ms. Watlington.
Ms. Grant, can you go back to your slide that you just had up with the, yes. So first of all, I just want to say I am very, very, very excited to see the work that you all have done in conjunction with CDOT to really start to take a comprehensive view of how else, beyond the site, how else can we work to try to mitigate some of the impact of growth and the delay of 160. We understand, obviously, the NCDOT has its own woes, and certainly our local efforts are not going to compensate completely for 160, but this certainly feels like the right direction. So thank you for leading the way on that and, in fact, raising the standard. I did want to just make sure I understood when you talk about mitigation here, and maybe this is a question for Ms. Hull, when you talk about maintains future delay or reduces future delay, I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly. Well, I'll just ask you, can you explain what this verbiage means?
Yes, Lakeisha Hall with CDOT. And so basically, as you know, different roads have different level of service gradings. And so the mitigations that's provided at multiple intersections are basically creating a condition where the level of service will be improved. And so, so it's just basically trying to create better movement patterns in an area that will reduce further delay moving through those intersections by some of those enhancements.
And so as we think about, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I think it's important for residents to understand as they're contemplating these petitions, these delays or calculations for future also include other development that occurs, correct?
Yeah, so they're basically background trips, and then we also look at the horizon year and how this project can mitigate their trips through their build-out. And so it takes a lot of the surrounding context into consideration as we're doing the traffic impact study.
Okay, so we could then interpret this as the improvements here is not just about the additional cars from Pulte's rezoning, but also considers that there is other development, whether it's by right or potentially other rezonings, that's calculated into the study.
Yes, staff reviews surrounding petitions to make sure that this project is mitigating anything above and beyond what they have put on the road network. And some of these improvements are actually creating a better condition, better than a no-build scenario, as we like to call it. So we looked at different alternatives of what it looks like with this petition and what it looks like without having this petition built. So it does take the entire context into consideration.
Thank you. And then lastly, I absolutely love this approach, taking the comprehensive look. Would you be able to provide this for holistically for the Still, well, I won't say all of Still Creek, but for the area in which we've got a number of petitions coming up?
Yes, ma'am. CDOT is more than happy to provide a better comprehensive look in the Still Creek area, and we're more than happy to work with your office on that.
Thank you so much.
All right, are there any other questions? Ms. Jackson, anyone else with a question? I have a question. It's probably in the materials. I just can't read the font in some of this on the site. Where's the closest grocery store, dry cleaners? Where's the neighborhood services area? I can't read that. That legend? I'm like, I can see the numbers,
The
but
legend
where?
identifies
Which
the
number is it?
intersection. Number 3 shows the area where there are a number of neighborhood services. There's also stuff moving up along the Steel Creek Road corridor.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else? No questions? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second, motion and second. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
All right, is there anyone that objects to the closing of the public hearing? No one, hearing no objection, the motion passes. Petition number, the selling property got deferred, is that, Mr. Pettin? Item 30?
Yes, item 30 was deferred, so that moves us down to item 31.
31 for the Pulte Group again?
Yes.
Deferred?
No, 31
Okay,
is,
here we are.
is on,
All
yeah.
right, rezoning petition 20, I have misplaced my deferred list,
Oh,
sorry.
no problem.
All right, my rezoning petition 2020-089 by Pulte Group for approximately 3.4 acres located on the west side of Briar Creek, north of Green Oaks, in District 1. The current zoning is multifamily, 22 units residential. The proposed zoning is urban residential conditional. Staff recommends approval upon outstanding issues being resolved. So we'll hear Mr. Pettin, and then we'll go to, we do have one speaker, Mr. Brown.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. 2020-089 is on Briar Creek Road. It's just under 3 acres, and the current zoning, as mentioned, is R22MF. The request for the proposed zoning is UR2CD. The land use plan for this project is from the Central District Plan, which recommends multifamily residential. No real specified density listed in that plan. We did look at the general development policies as well due to the date of the Central District Plan, and it does meet the general development policies for consideration of over 17 dwelling units per acre, and we do have some of that information listed in the staff report for you. The proposal itself is for 66 single-family attached dwelling units, townhomes. They would have a maximum building height of 48 feet, as well as a private street which would connect to Briar Creek Road, and some internal system of alleys and sidewalks included, and walkways throughout the development. A 12-foot multi-use path along Briar Creek Road with an 8-foot planting strip. We do have a proposed CATS bus waiting pad on Briar Creek Road as a result of this project. Architectural elements incorporated into the conditional notes, and tree save and usable common open space throughout the project as well. As mentioned, staff does recommend approval of this petition. We do have some outstanding issues related to transportation and site and building design to work through. It is consistent with both the Central District Plan recommendation for multifamily residential and consistent with the general development policies that recommend residential over 17 units per the acre. And staff will be happy to take any questions following Mr. Brown's presentation. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, council members, Colin Brown on behalf of Pulte, the petitioner, and we have a presentation which we can move through quickly. Staff did a very nice job on this.
Okay,
And if we have our slides.
We're waiting just a few minutes, a few more.
Okay. That's scary.
While we're waiting, is it
Glad you
possible,
said it, not
Mr.
me.
Newton, can you say something?
I'm sorry.
So while we're waiting, Mr. Newton, is it possible if you can try to say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay.
We're just looking for proof of life.
Mr. Newton, we've been missing you, so glad we can hear you now. All right?
Mr. Brown's head is gigantic from this vantage point.
I don't think you should be talking, Mr. Bakari.
And yours is very blue, Mr. Bakari.
I know. I don't start that conversation. I don't think you want that one. All right, here we are, Mr.
3
Brown.
minutes are up, Mr. Brown, so thank you for your presentation.
As Dave mentioned, here's the site, the current site of the Commonwealth Baptist Church. If I can get our slides to advance, here we go. 3.4 acre site. Currently houses an institutional use. We are here for rezoning. As Dave mentioned, the property is currently zoned R22 MF. So it is zoned for a kind of a medium density multifamily use. Land use plan is also, if developed by right, you could yield out a plus 70 units. We're actually looking for fewer units than allowed by right, looking for the flexibility. Pulte intends to do a for sale townhome community. Dave walked you through the highlights of the rezoning plan. There's a colored up version that presents a little better. We have held, I think, 2 community meetings and good feedback from the neighborhood. I think they product type and work in conjunction with the urban design staff. I think we saw some nice improvements to the site, really having a nice frontage out on Briar Creek, providing right of way for future CDOT improvements in the area. And if you have any, we're happy to answer.
Motion to close.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor of that motion? Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Graham? All right, we have, is there anyone that opposes the closing of the public hearing? Hearing no one, the motion passes unanimously. The next item is item 32, which also, I just don't know where I put that list. Anyway, so we're ready to start on item 32, 2020-090 by Remount LLC for approximately 1.5 acres located along the south side of Watson Drive, west of Remount and north of West Boulevard in District 3. The current zoning is R22, multifamily residential. Todd, transit-oriented development. Transition is the proposed rezoning. Staff recommends approval of this petition. Mr. Pettin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2020-090, it's 1.56 acres. It's on Remount Road, just at the intersection of Remount and Watson, as well as the intersection of Kimberly Drive. This petition is currently zoned R22MF. The proposed zoning is for TOD-TR. The adopted future land use is from the Central District Plan. That's 1993. It does recommend multifamily uses up to 22 DUA. In January 2019, CAT staff did recommend that the Silver Line continue through Uptown Charlotte to Wilkinson Boulevard. The MTC adopted that recommendation, which formally created that project. In 2020, CATS and partners started to do TOD planning and design services in order to advance that project. And petition 2020-090 in front of us this evening is located within 0.5 miles of the proposed Link Silver Line light rail corridor, as well as a station at Remount and Wilkinson Boulevard. CAT staff is in the process of refining that plan. We'll begin some more stationary planning in 2021. CATS is supportive of zoning districts that do allow transit-oriented development form and density within 1 mile of their stations. And again, this one is within 0.5 miles of that proposed station at Wilkinson and Remount. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. It is inconsistent with the Central District Plan for multifamily residential uses. However, it is within 0.35 miles of the proposed Remount Transit Station on the Link Silver Line, and the TOD district would be supportive of the future development and land use that's supported along that Silver Line as being planned out currently by CAT. So I'll be happy to take any questions. This is a conventional petition, so there is no conditional site plan to really go over and discuss.
Are there any questions for the staff on this petition?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor.
Who?
Mayor Pro Tem. This is Julie.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, Dave, can you go over again what uses would be allowed in TOD transition DT?
Sure. Residential uses, dorms, multifamily, single family. We have different commercial uses, things like amusement facilities, art galleries, fitness studios, bars, financial institutions. Hotels are not permitted in the TR district. A gas station would be. Trying to look at some of the ones that would be probably the ones that we might have some general concerns over. Restaurants are, of course, permitted. Enclosed storage facility is a permitted use in TR, as well as a car dealership or car rental or vehicle repair facility. Those are all permitted uses as listed in the ordinance under TR. And cultural facilities, community centers, daycare centers, those are all permitted as well. Institutional uses are permitted, and different public health and social service uses are all permitted in the TR districts, really in all TOD districts. But some that are in TR that aren't in some of the others are the more auto-oriented ones, like the storage facility, like the vehicle rental or vehicle dealership. Of course, has to be enclosed. It can't be an open car lot. But some of those uses are permitted in TR that aren't permitted in districts like UC, CC, or NC. So it's not an exhaustive list, but those are, I think, some of the highlights that we were discussing earlier.
Okay. And
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
yeah, I've got to get a better feel for this one. I thought we used to include maps that were zoomed out a little bit more so that we really could see, especially with TOD, we really got a feel for whether this should be a community center or transition, of the 4 different categories. So I have to look at this better to see exactly where it lands, but I do have concerns about some of the uses depending on how far away it is from our more, from the light rail, with regards to being allowed to have storage facilities or another car vending machine, as we've seen along the light rail. So I know it's conditional, so we can't ask what it's going to be used for, but I do have some concerns about being wide open like that and not understanding truly what's going to go there and if it really does match up with TOD. Because I think that I forget what the second category of TOD is, but in no time this area, it seems to me, is going to become more dense, and we're going to wonder, was that the right TOD category? So I realize that's vague. I feel like the information we've been given is vague as well.
Yeah, and I think following some of that discussion that we had earlier, we certainly want to go back and look. I think you're thinking of maybe the NC district, which is the other one that's appropriate next to single-family neighborhoods or residential, where we might want some lower building heights. So I think as staff, we'll also go back and evaluate the NC versus TR kind of question and see if one maybe alleviate some of those concerns about uses that, might generate some incompatibilities from a land use standpoint. And if we need to shift gears and maybe look at a different district, I think certainly want to make sure and evaluate that prior to this going into zoning committee and any further from there. So I'd be happy to discuss offline with you as well if we want to follow up a bit.
I appreciate that if you do that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ms. Watlington?
Yes, I share Mayor Pro Tem's concerns, and I will say, considering the playbook and our current investment corridors of opportunity at that particular intersection, Remount and Wilkinson, I will not be supporting anything that does not have conditions that prevents a gas station, enclosed storage, or vehicle repair. We are oversaturated on West Boulevard with auto-related industry, as we've indicated, and that is something that we've already indicated that we would not be supportive of, and is consistent with what we're doing with our playbook work that will roll into the comp plan and our corridors of opportunity. So I would absolutely look forward to the recommendation regarding NC versus this and any exclusions that may apply.
All right, are there any other comments or questions for the staff? All right, so may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston, who's a yes because he's not in his seat. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
All right, so that's 6. Is there anyone who opposes closing the public hearing? Hearing no one, then the motion passes I'm sorry, did I hear someone? Okay. Hearing no one, the motion passes unanimously. Item 33, rezoning petition 2020-093 by Griffman Investments, approximately 1.4 acres located along the east side of Griffith Street, west side of Lynx Blue Line, and the south of Poindexter. Is in District 3. The current zoning is TO TOD-MO, Transit-Oriented Development Mixed Optional. Proposed zoning is Transit-Oriented Development Urban Center. The staff recommends approval of this petition. We do not have, let me check. We do not have any speakers for this petition as well. So, Mr. Pettin.
Okay, thank you. 2020-093, it's 1.4 acres, as mentioned on Griffith Street, just south of Poindexter. This petition or property is currently zoned TOD-MO. Proposed zoning is TOD-UC. The adopted future land uses from New Bern Station Area Plan 2008 does recommend mixed-use transit supportive uses, and so this petition is consistent with the New Bern Transit Station Area Plan. Staff does recommend approval. It is a conventional TOD, so again, no site plan to be considered in the conversation for this one, but it is consistent, and staff does recommend approval, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for the staff? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
Does anyone object to the closing of the public hearing? Hearing no one in objection, that motion passes unanimously. The next item is item number 34. Petition 2020-094 by Childress Klein for approximately 9.5 acres on the North Perimeter Parkway, west of Rebecca and south of West Boulevard in District 3. I think Ms. Watlington's already filled out her bingo card with the petitions tonight. So the current zoning is light industrial conditional and multifamily residential. The proposed zoning is light industrial conditional, with a site plan amendment. The staff recommends approval of this. We have 2 speakers, Mr. McVeigh and Mr. Coyle, and we have the staff, Mr. Pettin, and then we'll follow up with the speakers.
Mike on, 2020-094. This petition is 9.5 acres. It's on Perimeter Point and Glen Lake Drive, just south of Rebecca Avenue. Mentioned the current zoning is I-1 conditional, as well as a portion of the property in orange there is R22MF. The proposed zoning would then be I-1 CD for the entirety, as well as a site plan amendment for that area that already has the conditional I-1 zoning on it. The proposal for this project this evening is for all uses permitted in I-1 district except for that EDEE accessory drive-through use. We do have a limitation on retail and those EDE uses to the ground floor of the buildings. We do prohibit billboards on the site. We are maintaining some of the existing entitlements from an old 1998 petition. A total of 1 million of those, of the 1.9 million have been developed thus far, so really we're left with just under about 900,000 square feet of entitlements. Access to the site will be from Perimeter Point Parkway only, so no access from that Rebecca Avenue road there that's just north of the project. Do have some sidewalk, 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk improvements being made along Perimeter Point. A 20-foot building and parking setback along Perimeter Point and Glen Lake as well. And also either a Class A or Class B buffer will be constructed on the site. Really that area that's currently zoned R22 that would be incorporated into this project is going to maintain itself primarily as a buffer to those existing single-family uses. We do have some lighting commitments for the project, as well as constructing a bus waiting pad on Perimeter Point Parkway to enhance transportation and transit to the site. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. We do have outstanding issues related to transportation to resolve. It is consistent for a majority of the site recommended for light industrial uses. That small portion that was still recommended for multifamily use and currently zoned multifamily is the one little inconsistency that we do have and note from the Southwest District Plan, but the majority of the site is consistent. And again, staff does recommend approval, and we'll be happy to answer any questions following the petitioner's presentation.
Mr. McNay and Mr. Coyle, you're up. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Can you hear me, council member? Council, sorry, Mayor.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Keith McVeigh with Moore Van Allen, Jeff Brown of our firm and I are assisting Childress Klein Properties with this petition. Tom Coyle with Childress Klein Properties is also on the meeting and available to answer questions. And again, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. Thank you for your time. I think Dave has done a great job explaining what the petition is about. It is a majority of the site of the rezoning is a site plan amendment. On the 9.54 acres, only 1.3 acres is actually going from R22MF to I1CD. As Dave mentioned, a majority of that area actually is being maintained as buffer areas. The rezoning allows a slight expansion of the I1 area to allow the previous uses that were approved for the site in 1998, which are office and commercial uses. As you can see in the area photograph, most of the site has already been developed with multi-story office buildings. That's the anticipated use here as well. Next slide. This shows you the portion of the site that was originally zoned, the whole site that was zoned in 1998. The portion in yellow is the area that we're doing the small change on. Next slide. And again, adds a small area to allow the previously allowed square footage to be built on the site with a slight expansion for parking areas and while maintaining buffers to the residential uses on Rebecca. Does maintain the same limitation on E, D, and E uses limited to the ground floor with no drive-through uses. We will be working with the staff to address the remaining staff issues. Be glad to answer any questions.
All right, are there any questions for the staff or the petitioner?
Move to close.
All right, we have a motion to close and a second. Can I have a second?
Second.
A motion to close made and seconded. So, Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
All right, is there anyone in opposition to closing this public hearing? Hearing no one in opposition, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is item number 35, petition 2020-097 by 6800 Selectron owner, approximately 12.4 acres located on the south side of Mallard Creek Road, along the east side of Penninger Circle, and imagine what district it's in. It's in 4? Why does it say 3? They just wanted to give you the center part, center as well. You got to cover that. All right, this is in District 4 with Ms. Johnson. The current zoning is RE1 CD research conditional, institutional conditional. The proposed zoning is research conditional and research conditional site plan amendment. The staff recommends approval of this. We have the staff presentation, and we have Mr. Carmichael, Mr. Shanks, Mr. Rainier, Ms. Palucci, I'm sorry I can't say that correctly, or I hope I came close, Mr. Mangus, and we have someone in opposition, Ms. Benny Townsend. So we'll hear from the staff, Mr. Pettin, and then we'll go to our speakers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, this is actually in Council District 2, so this would be in Councilmember Graham's district. Our apologies for that.
All right, it's in 2. Mr. Graham, sorry about that.
Yes, the 97 and 99 are both falling within District 2. So, but getting on to with this one, current zoning for this petition, which is just a little over, or just a little under 12.5 acres on Mallard Creek and Penninger Circle. As we mentioned, that current zoning is RE1 CD and institutional. That institutional is the darker blue up along Mallard Creek. The proposed zoning is for RE1 conditional and an RE1 conditional site plan amendment. The adopted future land use for this project is from the Northeast District Plan. It does call for institutional and office for this site. This proposal itself is for up to 50,000 gross square feet to accommodate uses that include medical health clinics, offices, financial institutions, laboratories, and research uses, all uses that are found in that RE district. We do have a limitation on principal buildings to just 2 within that gray building envelope. We also have installation of a leftover and right turn lane at the proposed site access on Mallard Creek Road. There's a commitment to an 8-foot planting strip and a 12-foot multi-use path along the frontage of Mallard Creek, as well as an 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk along Penninger Circle. We have a bus waiting pad proposed on Mallard Creek Road, as well as a 75-foot Class B buffer along that frontage with Penninger Circle that abuts that multifamily district to the east of the property. Also, some architectural design standards incorporated into the conditional notes and pedestrian connections from all buildings to the adjacent streets, and then a cap on lighting fixtures at 30 feet in height. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. We do have some outstanding issues related to transportation and environment. It is consistent with the Northeast District Plan. We do have a recommendation of institutional and office uses for the site. The proposed zoning in that RE1 conditional plan does accommodate uses that fall within institutional and office categories, so it is consistent with that plan. And again, staff does recommend approval, and we will be happy to answer questions following both the petitioners and community's presentation on this one.
All right, Mr. Carmichael, you have 10 minutes with the other folks. So if you're coordinating all of that, all of the pro speakers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Next slide. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council and the Zoning Committee, my name is John Carmichael, and I represent the petitioner, 6800 Selectron owner, LP. With me tonight are Steve Shanks, Gene Rayner, and Amelia Pascucci of Shorenstein, and the petitioner, and Jeff Mangus, the petitioner's site engineer, and they are available to answer your questions. The site contains approximately 12.4 acres and is located on the southeast corner of the intersection of Mallard Creek Road and Penninger Circle. Next slide. That's a tax map of the site. Below the site is the Selectron building, which is an existing office building that I'll refer to in a moment. Next slide. Next slide. The site is located in close proximity to the Wells Fargo facility and to Innovation Park, and the site is adjacent to the Selectron building, which is the building to the south of the site with a white roof. That building is also owned by the petitioner. Next slide. The southern portion of the site, as Dave mentioned, is currently zoned RE1CD, Research 1 Conditional District, and the northern portion of the site is currently zoned Institutional CD. The southern portion of the site was rezoned in 2018. The northern portion was rezoned by City Council in 2011. Next slide. So I want to share with you briefly the approved RE1CD rezoning plan for the southern parcels. Next slide. This is just another aerial to remind you that the southern parcels are the two most southern parcels. So anyway, next slide. This is the approved conditional rezoning plan and for the southern parcels. And under that approved plan, the southern parcels can only be devoted to a surface parking lot to serve the adjacent Selectron building, so a parking lot. It does have a 75-foot Class B buffer that is required next to Pittenger Circle. And under that conditional rezoning plan, vehicular access from the southern parcels to Pittenger Circle is permitted only when 3 of the 5 parcels of land located on the west side of Pittenger Circle are redeveloped for multifamily and/or non-residential use. Next slide. Now, as for the northern parcels, next slide. The northern parcels abut Mallard Creek Road. Next slide. It's zoned institutional CD, and under that rezoning plan, you could build a nursing home with independent and dependent living units. I will tell you that rezoning plan also incorporated the southern parcels, which were rezoned to RE1 CD back in 2018. Next slide. That's the independent, dependent living unit building that was proposed under the existing zoning. Next slide. So the petitioner is requesting that the site be rezoned from RE1 CD and institutional CD to RE1 CD site plan amendment and RE1 CD. And the purpose is to accommodate off-street parking for the site and certain adjacent parcels of land, and the adjacent parcels of land contain the Selectron building. And that request is consistent with the existing zoning of the southern portion of the site, and also to accommodate up to 50,000 square feet of gross floor area that can only be devoted to office, medical office, financial institution, laboratory, and research uses. As Dave mentioned, only 2 buildings, a maximum of 2 buildings could be developed on the site. It's anticipated that those buildings will be located next to Mallard Creek Road. Next slide. Next slide. So this is the rezoning plan for the site. You'll see that the southern portion of the site, the rezoning plan for the southern portion of the site looks very familiar because it's very similar to the existing rezoning plan for those southern parcels. The parking area is similar to the parking area proposed under the currently approved rezoning plan. This rezoning plan maintains the 75-foot Class B buffer along Pittenger Circle. However, the buffer could be eliminated when 3 of the 5 parcels located on the west side of Pittenger are redeveloped for multifamily and/or non-residential uses. This rezoning plan continues the limitation on access to Pittenger Circle, and there are architectural standards for the proposed buildings along Mallard Creek Road that are a part of the petitioner's conditional rezoning plan. Once again, there would be a vehicular connection to Mallard Creek Road, as Dave mentioned, and that vehicular connection is a driving factor of this rezoning request because it would disperse traffic in a better fashion rather than having all the traffic from the Selectron building going to IBM Drive. Planning does recommend approval, and the request is consistent with the Northeast District Plan. Thank you for your consideration, and we're happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmichael. Benny Townsend, are you available?
I am.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. You have 10 minutes to speak.
Well, first of all, let me say that I think that I appreciate you all the time as the council. I think I've been sent the wrong letter as opposed to the project being discussed at this time. The letter that I had in reference to a meeting tonight, it has to do with the development, I think, by Mr. Carmichael and his group behind my home here. the 23 acres here. It doesn't have anything to do with a building proposal down the street there. And that's what I was speaking on, because my map is highlighted for the building proposal behind my home here on Mallard Creek.
Okay, Mr. Townsend, we have another, Mr. Pettin, is that the
may
petition number
be-
37?
Yes, it may be 20,
Okay,
20099.
Mr. Townsend?
Yes.
We will move you to item 37. Thank you for helping us out. Mr. Carmichael appreciates it as well.
All right.
All right, so Mr. Carmichael, you'll not have a rebuttal tonight, okay? All right, are there questions for the staff or Mr. Carmichael?
Move to adjourn.
Or move to Mr. Bakari? We're getting close, but Mr. Bakari, you're not in the room, and I don't think we can carry that kind of weight by ourselves. All right, so Mr. Bakari just made a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second? Yes, and a second by Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Driggs?
Absolutely.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Is there anyone that objects to the closing of this public hearing? Hearing no objections, it passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is item 36, and it is rezoning petition 2020-098 by AHI 3100. Approximately 3.4 acres located south of North Tryon at the intersection of 26th Street in the NODA community. Mr. Eggleston's district. The current zoning is general business and industrial. The proposed zoning is transit-oriented development with a community center. Staff recommends approval of this petition. Mr. Pettin will give the staff presentation, and Mr. Brown will have 3 minutes. Yes.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. 2020-098, 4.18 acres on North Tryon, East 36th. Also has frontage on Bernard Avenue. The current zoning is B2 and I1. I1 is the brown portion, B2 is the red portion up on North Tryon. The proposed zoning is TOD-CC. The adopted future land use for the property is from the North Tryon Area Plan 2010. Does recommend office retail as well as some park and greenway uses for the site in that green area just off of Bernard Avenue. This is a conventional TOD request, so there is no site plan to discuss for this rezoning. It is inconsistent with the North Tryon Area Plan recommendation for office, retail, and park greenway uses for the site. However, the TOD district would support office and retail uses, but again, that it does allow those residential uses. That's where we should develop that inconsistency with that overall area plan recommendation. However, staff does recommend approval of this condition or this petition. It does meet the applicability requirements for the TOD-CC district. Requesting TOD zoning in this location does realize some of the listed land use goals by capitalizing on that proximity to the blue line, and also the petitioner's request for TOD will likely address many of the North Tryon Area Plan goals for regarding transportation and community design. So again, staff does recommend approval, and we'll be happy to answer any questions should you have any.
All right, before we go to the questions, we'll have Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, you have 3 minutes.
Madam Mayor, on behalf of the petitioner, Avery Hall, since this is a conventional petition, I won't delve into the presentation. I think Dave gave a good overview. I would just let you know for conventional zonings, even though community meetings are not required, we've hosted several, this is a very active neighborhood, as you know, and gotten a lot of feedback from them. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Motion to close the hearing.
We have a motion to close. We have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. We'll start with the vote. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Driggs?
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Ms. Ajmira?
Yes.
All right, so is there anyone that objects to closing this public hearing? Hearing no objections, then it passes unanimously. Someone needs to mute again, okay? Item number 37, rezoning petition. Mr. Townsend, this is the petition that I think you wanted to speak to, so we will come back to you as a protest petition on item number 37, all right? Okay, so this is approximately 20.8 acres located along the southeast side of Mallard Creek Road and north of Morris Estate Drive Council District 2, Mr. Graham, current zoning is single-family residential with 3 units per acre, and this new zoning, requested zoning is multifamily residential conditional, 8 units an acre, and the staff recommends approval. We will have,
Can everybody mute?
can we mute now? Okay, so then someone needs to mute. I don't know who that is. Ms. Jax? Who is that? It's up there. Mr. Graham? Everybody, okay. All right, so we'll start with Mr. Pettin, and then we'll go to Mr. McKay. I'm sorry. Item 37 has 2 people speaking against it, Mr. McKay and Mr. Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So I don't think that I've not heard that we wouldn't have someone speaking for it, but do they get 3 minutes to speak against or 10, Ms. Therese? I'm
I think they
sorry.
would still get 10, so.
How does, when there's no proponent and there are 2 opponents, how many minutes do the
Madam Mayor,
opponents get?
This is Jonathan Crowder. I did sign up to speak in behalf of the...
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. I'm asking, if you'll let me know, we'll go ahead and have the staff presentation. Mr.
Yeah,
Pettin?
just to clarify, we did, Mr. Crowder, who is part of the petitioner's team, didn't sign up until about 11. He was notified that he needed to sign up, so he may have been removed from the list, but he may be able to answer questions in the rebuttal form, Tari, I guess, if that's acceptable, rather than provide a presentation. What's that? He represents the petition, but...
So the person representing the petition signed up past the time frame?
Correct. So I think in those instances, we've allowed them to answer questions but not provide a presentation, if that's, but I'll defer to.
All right, we're going to defer
Ms.
to, the
Hagler.
attorney's going to let us know after you.
Correct, that'd be great. All right, so I'll get us started on the staff presentation. 2020-099 is 20.8 acres on Mallard Creek Road. The current zoning in place is R3. The proposed zoning is R8 MFCD. And this petition has applied the Northeast District Plan, which is from 1996. It does call for single-family, multifamily uses up to 8 dwelling units per acre on the site. This proposal itself is for up to 130 townhome units. Does commit to constructing road improvements with the existing unmaintained Penninger Circle, that public right-of-way. Also commits to not extending Penninger Circle to Mallard Creek, just shows that as a street stub. Does provide a right-in, right-out only on Mallard Creek with 100 feet of storage. Also a planting strip and sidewalk along all streets, 50-foot Class C buffer to abutting single-family residential, as well as architectural standards incorporated to the conditional notes. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. I have some outstanding issues with transportation and some technical revisions that need to be cleaned up, but it is consistent with the Northeast District Plan, which recommends single-family or multifamily use up to 8 dwelling units per acre. This petition comes in with 130 townhome units, so that would be a single-family attached product at 5.7 DUA. So again, it is consistent with that Northeast District Plan. Staff does recommend approval, and we'll be happy to take questions following presentations this evening.
All right, we have Mr. Paul McKay and Mr. Townsend. You'll be given 10 minutes to speak against. So Mr. McKay will go first. Is Mr. McKay on, Ms. Jackson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine, yes.
Thank you, good evening. I have 2 basic points that I would like to make. The first would be, and I'm discussing the Penninger Circle where it is not yet completed. It doesn't necessarily show that on your map, but the Penninger Circle area at the bottom that ultimately turns to the right, to the east.
Mr. McKay, can I make sure that all of the council has their mics or their mics muted, please? All right, and if you'll start again, Mr. McKay.
Yes.
I think Mr. McKay, okay. Would you go ahead and continue?
Mr.
Okay,
McKay, if you sit back a little further from your microphone, it won't make as much noise when you talk. Just a little more distance between you and your microphone.
Okay, how's that? Better?
Okay.
Is that good?
Mr.
Okay,
McKay,
so-
go ahead and continue.
Yes. I'm talking about specifically the unfinished part of Penninger Circle, which is at the bottom of the Penninger Lane now, and the road, the proposed road that comes into that from the proposed properties, and then would be immediate to our property. Doesn't necessarily say on there, but it's McKay residence. That intersection is what I'm talking about with my first point. At the community meeting on the 29th of July, I discussed the problem with that intersection, specifically that any egress traffic from that road from the new buildings would shine headlight noise directly into our house on the other side there, and would be a significant nuisance and a problem in that all the lighting would be directed into all of the front windows of that house. It would be extraordinarily intrusive. I discussed that at the community meeting, and Mr. Crowder had said that it would not be a problem to redirect that traffic, that the intersection could be changed, that it wouldn't be a problem. The intersection has not been changed, at least not on this map. It's not showing any change. And so again, the headlights that would be coming from all of the vehicles exiting that area onto Penninger Circle would shine immediately into the front of our house there. That's the first issue. The second one is also the Penninger Circle that would be developed from the
I think we're losing you a little bit. You might
turn
have
out
to lean
there all the
in
way
just a
down.
little bit, Mrs. McKay.
Actually, Penninger is slightly that
How many minutes, Stephanie?
south road, part of Penninger. Well, let me say that only this past week that I received this modified map that shows not accessing from Penninger onto Mallard Creek, but still that intersection that I'm talking about is the same as it was before. So since that traffic is no longer going to be going possibly to Mallard Creek, all of the traffic exiting that at night would shine headlights into our house there, into all the windows on every vehicle that exits there would shine its headlights, mandated by the dead end, that it would have to turn right there, and all headlights again would shine into the front of our house there. So it's a significant problem. It will be extraordinarily intrusive every single night, having traffic moving along there. So that's my first point. The second point is that that part of Penninger now is only a gravel road, is not finished, and dead ends at the bottom where the new T is at the bottom of Penninger there. It is not completed. It has not been completed. Moreover, it never has been worked on in the 17 years we have owned the house there. No work, no maintenance has been done at all to Penninger Circle there. So it's essentially a private road at this point, soon to be developed. And so all of the modifications and improvements to Penninger there would be moved onto our property as well as the property.
I think we've gotten, Mr. McKay, I'm going to ask you to allow Mr. Townsend to have some time to speak, and then we will be able to ask questions of you as well as Mr. Townsend. So if Mr. Townsend?
Yes, again, I'd like to say thank you for allowing us to speak here this afternoon. And like Mr. McKay, I didn't have an updated map here, and I can see where, as it now is proposed, not enter from Mallard Creek onto Penninger Circle. But I still like to address a couple of issues just for future reference in case that comes up. My property is right here where you see Hubbard Road at the top. I make the other leg of this intersection, which would make it a four-way intersection if it came through my home. But our basic concern is where this Pinnacle Circle is in relation to the stoplight and our personal driveways, less than 125 feet. One would have to merge and get over and make an entrance into this complex. But better yet, I basically wrote out my thoughts, and so let me express some of the things maybe you better understand about my wife herself. My name is Benny Townsend, and I and my wife, Teresa, lived here at Mallard Creek Road, 7132, for some 25 years. We have seen quite a bit of change in this area. Most recently, the opening of this long-awaited Mallard Creek road project. So we're not in objection to progress, but progress has to come about in a manner that doesn't cause overdue stress on people and environment upon which it's imposed. My home and driveway is located directly across from Hubbard Road, which is part of the Mallard Creek Hubbard Road intersection. At this intersection, we have to contend with left turns from Hubbard Road, U-turns from eastbound Mallard Creek Road, straightaway traffic from westbound Mallard Creek Road. The proposed entrance to this project is less than 125 feet from this traffic light and my driveway. Our concern is that the close proximity of this entrance to the stoplight in my driveway would not allow time and space for a safe exiting from Mallard Creek Road to this proposed complex. Our appeal to you is to consider our request for the eliminating of this dangerous entrance proposal, which would cause countless accidents, injuries, and possible loss of life. And I'd just like to say, before this road was widened and Mallard Creek only had no light across on Hubbard Road, I can't tell you the times that we have called 911 for someone that was hurt. I can't tell you how many times it hurt us when every time we would go playing in the middle of the night. We've had pregnant people lay on our lawn or lay on our porch until 911 come. We've had children out in the middle of the field there next to our house on this triangular shape here that have hidden trees and knocked their teeth out. And so our concern is for safety of the community. And since this road is open up Mallard Creek now, it is a freeway. So there would absolutely be no safe way for anyone to exit out of my driveway or these individuals that live on Pinnacle Circle there out on Mallard Creek safely without basically being in fear of their life with all of this going on just 125 feet from them. So I'd just like for you to take into consideration allowing that to be an entrance or an exit out of this proposed complex here for the safety of the community.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McKay, you have about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Do you have anything that you want to add, Mr. McKay?
Yes, certainly. Again, my second point is that the lower half of Pinninger Circle that will still exist is entirely on our properties and in no way impacts on the new proposed residences. And I would suggest and request that that road be either moved over onto the new property, since 20 acres plus, and there's sufficient room for it, move it over, or perhaps move it in between the two buildings on the bottom there, because that, again, it's significantly adversely impacting our house, and is not really an appropriate thing to do right there, given that there's the space available on 20 plus acres. And so again, it's very intrusive, everything that's going on there into the front of our home, into the parking that would be there, the sidewalks that would be there, the improvement of Pinninger Circle, all would adversely affect our home.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your comments. And so now we'll open it up. In this part of our meeting, we will be able to ask questions from the staff, as well as Mr. McKay, Mr. Townsend, and Mr. Crowder. Mr. Crowder will only be allowed to address answers to questions. All right? So do we have any questions for any of those groups or any one of those folks?
I do, Madam Mayor.
All right, Miss Mayor Pro Tem, sorry.
Yes, the first gentleman who spoke, sir, where is your house from there? I'm trying to figure out what intersection.
If you look at
I'm sorry, the second gentleman who spoke, I apologize.
Is that Mr. Townsend?
If you see on your map where it says Class C buffer
Yes.
at the top, well, where that green, I guess that's the first home right there,
Okay.
next to the white area.
Okay. On the opposite side of the road?
No, on the side where the project is, it would butt up right to the project. I'm directly across from Hubbard Road with the stoplight there.
Okay.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Isold, he's essentially where the letter C is in Class C
Yeah,
buffer.
Right.
Okay, I see. And so the road alignment, though, is going to come out, the new roads will be on Penninger Circle, and you're creating a new road to come out on Mallard Creek?
Do you see where the,
I'm sorry, sir, and I apologize, I meant that more for staff with regards to, Dave, if you could tell me.
Yes, yeah, so they would improve Penninger Circle to that T intersection where that yellow line kind of stops before it goes up to Mallard Creek, and then the other yellow lines are proposed new public streets that would eventually work their way back over to Mallard Creek, and then they would also stub to that property that's undeveloped between this project and Morris Estate Drive. So Penninger is only improved about halfway up in that existing right-of-way. They won't connect it to Mallard Creek Road. The only connection to Mallard Creek would be that where that red arrow is over there on the left-hand side of that project.
Okay. And is there signalization that's going in?
I would have to defer to CDOT on if there's any signalization on the project.
Do you know if there's a traffic signal?
So as CDOT reviewed this petition, we only reviewed it in regards to connecting to Mallard Creek Road at that area that Mr. Patton showed. And so at this time, it will not be providing a signal at that area.
there is a stop line.
I'm sorry, I can't, you have to be asked the question, so, but I know that you can continue to work with the petitioner. That's part of what this hearing's about. All right, so are there other questions for any one of our speakers? All right.
Move to close.
We have a motion to close the public hearing and a second.
Second.
All right, so our public hearing is closed. Mr. Driggs, I'm sorry, it's not closed. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington? Yes. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
Mr. Graham? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
All right, so the hearing is closed. And we'll go to our next item, which is item 38. Item 38 is petition 2020-100 by Delray Ventures for approximately 4.9 acres on the south side of Sharon Amity, east of Addison and west of Water Oak in District 5. The current zoning is single-family residential with 3 units per acre. The proposed zoning is urban residential conditional. Staff recommends approval of this petition, and we have 4 speakers for this one. I tell you, Mr. Newton, I think this is deja vu all over again. They must love that Sharon Amity and Water Oak Road property area. All right, so we'll hear from Mr. Patton, and then we'll go to Mr. Brown, who I think will organize Mr. McCrory, Mr. Caldwell, and Mr. Jim. Is that our? I'm not going to say this right. Jimenez? Jimenez? Jimenez. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. 2020-100, just under 5 acres on North Sharon Amity Road. The property is currently zoned R3. Proposed zoning is UR2 conditional. This is from the South District Plan, which does recommend institutional land uses for the site. That's likely due to the current institutional use that's on the site and has historically been on that site for the majority of its time that it's been developed. However, the general development policies do apply for this project, and it does recommend densities that are supportive of the 9.6 units per acre that are part of this petition this evening. The GDP actually supports uses or densities up to 17 units per acre, so this comes in well under that GDP recommendation. The proposal itself is for up to 48 single-family attached dwelling units. We do have vehicular access from a private street up onto North Sharon-Amity Road. We also have internal private streets that serve those units, a CATS bus waiting pad along with a 12-foot multi-use path and a 6-foot wide planting strip along North Sharon-Amity. Architectural design commitments are incorporated into the conditional notes, as well as a buffer, 30-foot Class C buffer adjacent to single-family properties on the west side of the site. Also some undisturbed tree save area on the back end of the project there, highlighted in green on that southernmost portion. Also commits to a minimum of 5,000 square feet in a central common space. That's that kind of central green block in the middle. That would be improved with things like benches, gardens, a pet area, other amenities to make that some functional open space in the center of the project. Also, pedestrian scale lighting would be incorporated, and that would be less than 15 feet in height. Staff does recommend approval of this petition upon resolution of some outstanding issues and technical revisions. Those are related to site and building design, transportation, as well as some environmental notes that would just need to be captured on the conditional plan. As mentioned, it was inconsistent with the institutional recommendation. However, under the general development policies, there is support for the requested density less than or equal to 12 dwelling units per acre. Again, this comes in at 9.6 units to the acre, so we are consistent with that GDP. We do recommend approval, and we'll be happy to take any questions. I did receive some correspondence. I think there may be some technical difficulties on Mr. Brown's side. They may be back on, but we may have to find out if they're with us at the moment.
I think we're back, if everyone can hear us.
Yes, we can. All right, then they are back. We'll take questions after that.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Madam Mayor, council members, on behalf of the petitioner, this is a site you may know as the old Masonic Lodge site. And this is actually the second development team that we worked with on this site as the project has evolved. I think we probably hosted more community meetings on this site than any project I've worked on. Councilmember Newton can attest to that, as he has attended most of them. So really, we've watched this project evolve. And as Dave mentioned, now we're looking at 48 townhome units centered around a central green. We've done a lot, as you can see, to buffer the surrounding edges, worked with the folks to the rear of the site to coordinate a nice tree-safe buffer there. So I'm pleased to be here, not hearing from opposition tonight. Here's a colored version of the plan. This is a little bit earlier version, so our current version does show 48 units, but the colored version, you're able to see, I think, how we've tried to screen up the project, focusing on central green. Happy to answer any questions you all have.
All right, are there any questions for the staff or the petitioner? Hearing,
Close.
we
Mr.
have a
Newton.
motion? I'm sorry.
Mr. Newton.
Mr. Newton?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate, so thanks for the presentation, Mr. Brown, and I do appreciate the extensive community engagement that has been ongoing with this and the previous petitioner for quite some time. I had one question. As you know, there were concerns to the rear of the property pertaining to runoff and the possibility of flooding with any impervious space. I know that we have the tree save on the back side of this now, which is something I appreciate, but I don't know if I got an update on, I think before there was discussion there possibly being a reservoir, underground reservoir on site to cap any groundwater or any stormwater runoff, and just wanted to ask about that real quick while I have the opportunity.
I did. I understood the question, and I think our main engineer is out of town. I think Tom McCrory's on if you need a more detailed answer. But what I would point you to is The neighbors are absolutely correct about there being a stormwater issue. And one of the things that we're coordinating on this project, you can see this portion of our site, the right-hand side of your screen. There's an area we're staring entirely away from. That's an area that the city of Charlotte is already involved in a significant stormwater improvement project in the area that is much needed to address those very real considerations that the neighbors have raised. So we think that the city's project is going to solve many of those. Our design has been working with them to make sure that our stormwater is coordinated with them, but we think that the city project underway, which we are coordinating for easements, is going to address those existing issues.
Mr. Newton, did you have any further questions?
I was muted there, sorry. So thank you for that, Mr. Brown. I'll follow up with stormwater as well, and assuming there aren't any other questions, I'll move to close the hearing.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington? Yes. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Newton?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
All right, is there anyone who objects to closing this public hearing? Hearing no objections, the motion passes unanimously. The next item is item number 39, rezoning petition 2020-101 by White Point Paces Partners for approximately 4 non-contiguous acres between 3 parcels, both located in the Optimus Park community in the vicinity of Optimus Hall. It's in District 1. The current zoning is transit-oriented development, mixed optional heavy industrial, and the proposed zoning is transit-oriented development urban center. Staff recommends approval of this petition. We have one speaker signed up. Mr. Carmichael will follow Mr. Pettin's presentation of staff. Mr. Pettin.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. 2020-101 is Todd M.O. and I-2. It's currently 3 parcels. I know there was a little bit of confusion. Just want to clear this up as we kind of get started. Can we have staff's presentation on the screen, please? Thank you. Let me get to that first slide. I'll show where the differentiation is here. So if we could go back to the existing zoning slide. Okay, so this little pink corner that's up in that top section on Parkwood that's there surrounded by the industrial zoning indicated in brown, that's the actual 3rd parcel. So there's a small parcel within that large triangle on Parkwood. So that's where we get the 3. I thought there were, it's labeled maybe as 2 development areas in some of your materials, but there are 3 parcels included. Just want to clarify that. And we'll show that better on some future maps. GIS just didn't capture that little internal parcel on Parkwood. So just wanted to clarify that. This is proposed as TOD UC. It's for the Parkwood Transit Station Area Plan and the Adopted Future Land Use. That's from 2016. It does recommend TOD mixed use as well as office, retail, industrial, warehouse distribution uses for the site. This is a conventional TOD petition, so there's no site plan. We do recommend approval. It is consistent with the transit-oriented section recommendations in that station area plan, but there is inconsistency with that area that's recommended for office, retail, and industrial warehouse and distributions for one of those parcels. But again, it is consistent with those transit-oriented uses, and it's supportive of the transit-oriented development that's ongoing in that area around the Blue Line station. So staff does recommend approval, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Will Mr. Carmichael?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just here to answer any questions. The petitioner appreciates your consideration. Petitioner is the redeveloped and owns Optimus Hall, but we're happy to answer any questions.
All
Motion to
right.
close the hearing.
I'm happy to.
We have a motion to close the public hearing
Second.
and a second. So Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Ms. Watlington? Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Driggs?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Bakari?
Yes.
All right, I think that's our last hearing. Is
Motion
there
adjourned.
anything? We have a motion
Second.
to adjourn. I'm sorry. Was that last motion unanimous? Yes, if anyone doesn't object, it's unanimous. And Now we have a motion to adjourn and a second, and it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.